and it is 12 noon. I wish to welcome everyone to the Superintendent's Workshop being held in the Joanne Idelette Jr. TEC. I ask out of respect to everyone, please silence all electronic devices at this time. Also, if you have any material you wish to share with any board member, please give that to our Executive Assistant, Mrs. Moray, seated over here. We will take a break every 2 hours or, if needed, before that. At this time, I'm going to turn it over, but the superintendent is online. He is at a conference out of town, so he is online. Is he going to start or, okay.
Yeah, I am ready to go. Thank you, Madam Chair. You turned it over to me. Typically you say the purpose of this meeting. So the purpose of this meeting is to present items that will come to the board for approval, as well as other discussion items. As you just referenced, I am actually in San Diego at the ASU GSV Summit, which is the largest EdTech conference in the United States. And we have the opportunity to highlight and showcase our work. We'll be premiering on the documentary main stage today, our documentary, our partnership with the Learning Alliance, and very, very excited to share the outstanding work that we are doing collectively as a school district and the impact that it's having on our community. We have a series of agenda items today. The first is the semi-annual policies that come to the board for approval. And before I turn it over to our Chief of Staff to begin this presentation, just want to thank Ms. Holmes, our attorney, for all of the work, cabinet members. This is an extensive process in which we go through in order to ensure that the items that are presented to you for policy changes are thoroughly reviewed, aligned to our system's expectations and way of work. So what comes to you is a significant amount of work that we take great pride in this process. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Jacobs to begin the presentations.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Good afternoon, board members, and through the chair. I have two technical corrections that I'll be reviewing with you. The first one is policy 0118, and you can see that legal citations have been added to the bottom of that particular policy. And then policy 0122.1, member powers, again, legal citations have been added to that policy as well.
Policy is policy 7540.02. These updates reflect the Department of Justice's final rule updating regulations for Title II, Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. All of these updates include streamlining that shift of digital content from web content, clearly outlining the exemptions, the associated procedures, expectations for training and accountability, and as shared with you in individual board member briefings, our change from School Messenger to Aptogee really placed us in a fantastic holding pattern in preparation for this, as Aptogee does not allow us to be out of compliance with it. Every web page has a translator feature, a reader feature, so we are in a great place with this policy.
Right.
Thank you. Who's next?
For the next policy, it's 8405. First of all, good morning or good afternoon. The next policy is 8405, the school safety and security. These updates basically reflect all the updates that have been received through the threat management portal that we have got new information on. So our policies just reflect the new updates on that. We have added some new requirements embedded into from whatever the rule was into our policy. So these updates are all reflective of this policy. The next policy update, it's 8420. This is the emergency management and preparedness policy. We changed some minor language in the policy as well and added some Florida rule and state statutes that are incorporated. The last policy for me, it's 8470, which is the sex offender policy, registered sex offender policy, and this simply just received a one minor statutory change. That's all I have for me.
Board members, anybody? All right, we're good so far.
Great. Through the chair, good afternoon. I have 5 policy updates. This might be the lightest ever for the curriculum and instruction team, so very excited to share them with you. The first one is minor language changes around school advisory councils and school improvement plans. You'll notice on that, it's just changing some of the technical language around that. The next one is policy 2421. This is around career and technical education. It adds digital materials, CAPE digital tool certificates, and CAPE industry certification language. And it also adds language around the requirements for enrollment, the procedures outlined to report enrollment. The next one is policy 2450. This is Treasure Coast Technical College, and it follows that same path around the requirements to report enrollment of the students in adult general education and post-secondary career and technical education. And my last one is policy 5460. This updates a few minor technical corrections, capitalizations, and things like that. It does delete the language around the special education, the students with disabilities, the requirements for that, and then it does also change the certificate of completion. It changes that language to additional educational options available to students who fail to meet certain requirements. And those are my updates.
Hey, board members, anything on curriculum? Dr. Rosario?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a few meetings ago, there was a policy, and I'm not so sure I didn't see it here. I don't know if we're going to come back to it at another time, but it was the religion in the curriculum policy 2270. I raised a concern about the language that's in there. In that one, as in policy 5225, which is called absences for religious holidays. I don't know who might recall, maybe Mr. Green remembers the conversation. Not sure exactly who was there because I know there were some absences, but it really was a conflict between the language that's in one and the language that's in another that allows for absences of students for religious purposes, and then where one says you can and then the other one says you can't. So
I think those policies will come through.
come back through, okay, so I'll wait until that point.
They're not in this particular round, but Dr. Rosario, I have spoken to Ms. Infel, and she has reviewed those as well, so I'm going to turn it over to her for 1 second.
Sure.
So there's a couple different issues at play here, and there's enough for different, a lot of our policies say a lot of different things about religion. And so we'll start with, the first involves whether students are released during the school day for religious instruction. That's in 5223, and that's the parent's option to do so. In 5225, it's absences for religious holidays, so that's a different thing. Then moving on to 2270, that's religion in the curriculum. And that we did back in 2013. It was adopted, but that's the curriculum that includes academic references to religion. And there was a recent case, Mahmoud v. Taylor in 2025, in the Supreme Court in that case made it clear that parents do not have a right to remove their children from secular educational content simply because it touches on religion, and that schools may teach about religion in a historical or cultural context without creating an opt-out right. And so in here, it also states that no student shall be exempted from attendance in a required course of study. So I understand where you're coming from. It seems like they contradict with each other, but one deals with the absences while the other one deals with the religion that's in the curriculum itself.
Well, here's where I will just ask for a deeper dive into this. Because the language that you just mentioned, if you keep reading, where I don't see an issue with the way that it's worded in this one in particular, because it says no student shall be exempted from attendance in a required course of study on the grounds that the instruction therein interferes with the free exercise of his or her religion. In Mahmoud, there was an interference with the free exercise of religion. And so I think that we need to just take a deeper dive into that language because we want to make sure that this aligns certainly with that, and I know that you will.
And
Absolutely.
these are under review for coming in the next round.
The coming, okay, perfect.
Because then there are two other policies, if I will just go through real quick. There's policy 8805, which is the model policy on religious expression
that
in
I had
public schools.
separately.
And that one we're required to adopt because we have to adopt the
Right.
state's model policy. And even though they recently came out with, and I believe we're going to touch on it in just a minute, even though they recently came out with new guidance, we have to adopt the model policy as it's written. So until the state updates that model policy, we probably should keep it the way it is. And then we also have the policy 5780.01, which is your Parents' Bill of Rights, which I know you're well aware of. So they all kind of work in concert with each other, but I've actually put them all together in one thing. So we can go ahead and touch base on all those too. And
Sure.
we do want to look at the language, make sure that nothing conflicts.
Sure, I do have an item for discussion
Right.
on the items that you just mentioned for the model policy. But the model policy does not talk about absences for religious purposes. So coming back to this one on 5225, the very first, and this is where I see a conflict in the language, the very first policy, the very first paragraph, it reads, "It is the policy of the school board that absences from school for observances of religious holidays," okay, that we know, holidays are separate from some of the other things, but there's an or. So it says from religious holiday or because the tenet of the student's religion forbid secular activity during a school day. So if there is obviously a tenet of the student's religion that forbids that secular instruction, we have to be able to honor the parent's right to pull the student from that particular instruction or from that course. So one says don't do it and one says they can do it. So all I'm asking is to kind of do a cross-check on these two and make sure that the language supports what we're supposed to allow the parents to do, especially, going back to Mahmoud, which is the most recent one that you know, and allowing for that exemption for parents to be able to pull their child from something that is against their religious tenet.
And we do have those two flagged for review.
Yes,
Policy.
perfect, thank you.
Ms. Rosario?
Yes.
Couple things. Ms. Becerra, on the information with additional educational options available in students who fail to meet the certain requirements, it talks about the board will provide each student who fails to earn a standard diploma under this paragraph a document from the FLDOE detailing available post-secondary options along with the student's official transcript. What are some of those post-secondary options for those kids?
I think that they would be not limited to, but including adult education through the GED program, any of the additional opportunities for students to earn their diploma in other ways.
Okay.
I think that so that policy is really split into two sections. One is speaking about special education, and one is speaking about the certificate of completion.
Right, right. And obviously Treasure Coast Technical College, maybe for some of the
Correct.
programs there, that would help. Because I think about those students who just can't do that,
Correct.
pass the test. And Ms. Inval, just to follow up on that other question, when we talk about the bill, July 1, 2025, the bill with religious and patriotic expression in the public school system, when I reviewed that, when I saw this was on our agenda, I guess there was one question. Dr. Moore, are you there? Or is he on California time?
Yes, ma'am, I'm gonna figure out how to turn it off.
We've never said to a parent, you cannot be excused from school if there's a religious reason, have we?
No,
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Next, I think we're done with that. No? Okay, good.
Madam Chair, next section is finance policies. So I have 20, so sit back, it's gonna be a while. Actually, I'm gonna cover 90% of them in my intro. Professional development, change to professional learning in statute, his, her to their, personnel to employees. So the vast majority of the changes in here are cleaning up some language to be consistent across all policies. And I know as Neola's going through that process, So a lot of them are just language changes or grammatical changes, but I'll go through quickly. Travel and expenses, 0147.1, literally changed development to learning and strikes the word chapter. 1139, educator misconduct, strikes the word furthermore, and from human resources, strikes the word services. The next three grouped together, 1211, 3211, and 4211 are all whistleblower. Again, there's a few small language changes in there, but really what clarified is a whistleblower cannot be retaliated against as long as what they bring forward is legally sufficient and meets the requirements of Florida Statute 112.3187. So it adds that in those three policies, those two requirements. 1220 and 3220 both go together, evaluation of administrative employees and evaluation of instructional employees. And that changes development to learning, his, hers to their, personnel to employees. And in the instructional area only was a miss last time when we did administrative, probably years ago, when the statute changes. Under the instructional, it changes the student performance part of an instructional personnel evaluation from at least 50% to at least 1/3. That's already in the administrative, is already in our practice, and already in our other policies. 2261.02 is Title I Parent Right to Know, and it adds two major sections. One is around testing transparency. We're going to tell parents when we're going to test, what we're going to test, how we're going to test, give them the calendar, and it'll all be at the beginning of the year. And two, language instruction for English language learners. We're going to tell those parents why we're giving the assessment, the outcome of the proficiency assessment, the instruction we're going to provide, the resources, and the exit criteria. So things we already have in place, but it just defines that process about what we communicate to the parents for testing and for English language learners. 4120, employment of support staff. You've heard this before. The statute has changed to drop back from No Child Left Behind, highly qualified, to now possesses all of the qualifications required under federal and state law. So no matter what they call it, they just have to meet whatever the requirement of the certifications are. And this section is specifically like for our teacher assistants and paraprofessionals under support staff. 1243 and 3243, professional meetings. It literally adds three examples of what professional meetings are, and those examples could be related to activities and duties in your responsibilities, have direct value that could be used later in the performance of your job, or collaborative efforts such as with other districts, professionals, or organizations that could enhance classroom instruction, and those things should be aligned to school improvement plans. So it just added some examples of what a professional meeting should be. 2111, parental and family involvement in the school. Again, just a few minor language changes. Under volunteer opportunities, it does add another example showing how a school might support the transportation or childcare needs of a family to make sure that they could participate in a family event. And it adds some additional bullets around parental rights. We have a lot of listed in there, but one of them is the right to inspect district instructional materials and to opt out of district level data collections. Ms. Inval, I do want to make one point out, and Madam Chair, on the record, those two bullets that are added, if you can even scroll down a little bit, you see those two right there, 6 and 11 you see in green. The references at the end, we are striking see also policy 2521 instructional materials, and on number 11, see also 2605 research and evaluation. Those are Neola policies that are worded different than ours. We have student assessment, not research and evaluation. We have 2520 and 2522, which break out the adoption of the materials and then the objection to the materials. So we are simply striking out those because those don't reference our particular policy. So when they come forward at the board meeting, you won't see those two there. You'll see those red line. 2261, Title I services. A couple language changes, personnel to employee, development to learning, that's it. 3120.04, the employment of substitute, short-term, and part-time instructional employees, and it just expands an entire paragraph talking about substitute teachers in that they can serve in the absence of a teacher, that the principal should determine the responsibilities, that they'll work the hours of the teacher that they're substituting for. So it just gives some clarity around substitute teachers. And then the second part just talks about part-time, like you could do part-time for summer school, you could do part-time for less than a full day or less than a full year. So just some clarity around when someone is filling in for someone else. And 2261, Title I services, we just did 6325, procurement of federal grants. With inflation, they have simply raised the threshold for a micro purchase from $10,000 to $15,000, which is in that section. But because the wording was just moved around so much, we just struck the entire paragraph and added theirs. It says the same exact thing, just in a little bit different format. And if you scroll down a little bit more, at the end, it adds a 5 fiscal year requirement for maintaining those procured documents, or 3 years from the effective date of the award, whichever one is longer. 6520 payroll deduction, that is actually a staff edit, and as we discussed in briefing, this adds to the payment of group insurance premiums that we can payroll deduct. Currently, we're collecting checks from people if they maybe they have a late fee or proactive care, there's a late fee charge. We're collecting a check because the policy doesn't allow for fees or never contemplated. So we're adding and other fees established by the district that are associated with participation in the district's group insurance plan so that we could payroll deduct a fee. Of course, we would notify employees at the beginning of the plan year that these fees may be payroll deducted if they are owed. That's a staff change. 7540.04 is our staff technology acceptable use policy. Every change in here are simply those language changes I explained before. Board to district, faculty to employees, no substantive changes, only those minor word changes to align to other policies. 8330 student records, a couple little word changes, but really what we're adding in here is that threat management documents all around a threat that might come forward and we have documentation of it, used to be categorized as category B, or must be maintained as long as useful and necessary to the situation and to the documents. Now they are categorized as category A student records, which means permanent record. They are maintained permanently in the record for those threat management documents. 8600.04 bus operator qualifications. A few minor changes, but it moves criminal background checks down. It looks like we deleted it, and it's simply right there in red. It simply moves it below the bullets. And then later it does add 2 items for things that could cause possible discipline and or termination. And that is, if you scroll down a little bit more, 2 or more, one more page, 2 or more moving violations or using a wireless communication device while you are driving per Florida statute. And those are things that are already in our procedure manual that we do, but they're adding them as something that you could possibly be disciplined for depending on the case. And the last one is 8700 anti-fraud. And when spelling, and I'm not sure if this is a Neola issue or we didn't catch it before, but when spelling forging, it had an extra O in it, so it said foregoing documents instead of forging documents. So the substantive change is we are making sure it says forging documents. The other ones are just striking some references to administrative procedures and staff to employee. That's the only substantive change, and those are my policies.
Hey, board members, anyone? Mr. Dyer.
Yeah, I originally had a question on, was it 3220? Yes. Which is the evaluation of employees when it goes from 50% on educational outcomes to 33%. I did understand that our practice has been another way for a while, and this is just catching the policy up with the, what's actually been happening for a number of years. I just thought it maybe real quickly could review the three, I think it's now a third. Could you tell me what those three are again, or just review that?
Yeah, and Ms. Crisafulli might want to speak to it as she's been intimately involved in that over the last few years.
Yes.
So for all, sorry, is that on? For all school for administrators, we have it the same as the teacher model, which we changed about 5 years ago. So a third is on the actual items specific to the strategic plan that we aligned. So there's actual items that match the standard, and then there's a third of your deliberate practice. So this is where each administrator and teacher also chooses a deliberate practice. For most of the administrators, it is their school data, their school achievement level. What are we going to do, and here are the steps that I'm going to take to make sure that we achieve the level that we've set out as the expectation. And then a third is the actual student data.
And so just to clarify, that third student data, actually the entire assessment now ties to student data in some way or another. One of them could be through the strategic plan goals, and one of them could be the deliberate practices where they set their own data goals within that deliberate practice, maybe on an iReady or on a DIBELS if it's kindergarten. So it's just through different mechanisms.
And this has been going on for 5 years, and
Yes.
we're just catching up.
This particular policy didn't get caught. The admin
Right,
was changed
gotcha.
there, and the instructional just didn't get caught at that time.
Anyone else? Dr. Rosario?
So I have a question about the whistleblower protection policy. I guess I'll start with 3211, since all of the others have the same language. The last paragraph states, upon receipt of a legally sufficient report made by an employee, these are the changes, pursuant to this policy, an investigation shall be conducted by the superintendent or the board attorney. So I guess this would be for Ms. Envil. If an employee has a concern or believes that a concern is worthy of using this policy to bring forth information, oftentimes employees, I guess they think that it's legally sufficient, right? They're doing it in good faith, saying, hey, there's something concerning, I want to bring this forward, and I want to claim whistleblower protection. There's nothing nefarious in that. But it's not then, therefore, it's not until after a complaint or a situation is submitted under whistleblower protection that then it would be found, legally sufficient or not by you or by somebody else. And so at that point, a conversation with the employee, I'm imagining a conversation with the employee might say, well, hey, this isn't legally sufficient. At that point, what I don't want is to then hurt the employee who originally just had a goodwill faith of saying, hey, there's something of a concern here that I think you ought to look into, and I fear that my job is going to be in jeopardy if I bring this forward. So how do we protect the employee and still protect the process of legal sufficiency?
Through the chair. If it doesn't fall under the statutory requirements, it's in 112.3187 and 3.3189, I think it's still, it may not fall under whistleblower protection, but it doesn't mean that it's not an issue that should be looked at from a district-wide perspective. So I think it's something, if it doesn't meet whistleblower protection, I would still then forward it on to the superintendent and his staff, say, hey, this doesn't meet whistleblower, but it's something you need to look at anyway. And when you're talking about if the employee still has like a protection or whatever, they're not allowed to be retaliated against, and I guess it's kind of speculation on what would happen with them, but I think if anything happens in the future that is not specifically related to their performance, like let's say they stop coming and their attendance is bad. Well, that's completely unrelated to whatever they
Correct.
reported, right? So I think if there were any sort of adverse employment action that happened thereafter, we'd have to see if there was a nexus between the two, and we just look at that.
I know. I knew that you would answer that way. But the whole idea of whistleblower is to protect the employee's position.
Absolutely.
Protect their job, because it happens all the time, right? And a supervisor can claim anything in a right-to-work state, and say you're not performing up to par, and then go ahead and fire that employee when, in fact, the employee, there has never been an issue before the whistleblower or the information coming forward. So it's just not right. And I just want to be able to understand the process and the change in this language, which I think is fine, but I still don't want us to retaliate against an employee, even if their complaint is not legally sufficient, if that makes sense.
That does make sense, and I think your concerns are valid. As far as I've been here, I don't think I haven't had any whistleblower or complaints come to me, but I do have lots of experience in them, unfortunately. But if there were some sort of adverse employment action that happened afterwards, I would absolutely look at that to make sure it's not tied directly to their complaint.
Okay.
Would a whistleblower complaint come through you generally?
So yes, I usually think it would usually
Okay,
come to me. It
so-
might be submitted to the superintendent. Sometimes it comes from different outside agencies or whatever. And under the law, the whistleblower complaints are supposed to be submitted to the person at the agency who's designated to do that. Sometimes our employees don't know who that is, but if they were to come, I would imagine they'd be routed to me.
And you're designated
logistically.
here in the school district, you're the designated?
Yes, in the policy, in our whistleblower
Okay.
policy, I think
Okay.
it says that they have to make them to the school board attorney or,
So
board
that
attorney.
sounds like that's a good vetting. Is it coming through you, so
it's-
you could look at legal sufficiency at the time? Because I know with whistleblowers, it kind of works two ways. You want to protect a legitimate whistleblower, but at the same time, there's a lot of frivolous stuff that goes on for other meetings, and it also needs to protect the district.
Yeah, it's
or
a
the
checks and
employer,
balances.
So it works both ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
Absolutely.
good.
And so,
Well,
as a reminder, I work for the board as well independently. I don't work for the superintendent. So
Right.
it is also something that I would look at, from protecting the board standpoint, and then make sure the superintendent is aware from a
Right.
logistical, operational standpoint.
Do you have
Okay.
another thing about whistleblowers? Or is
Yeah,
it
I
something
wanted
else?
to follow up on that. The policy doesn't say that a whistleblower complaint would go to you. The policy in the past, just so that you know, Mr. Dyer, we have had whistleblower complaints come in, not a lot, but we had a couple, at least while I have been on the board. One was actually brought to us, I believe, at a board meeting, through citizen comment. They said, I'm claiming whistleblower protection, and then said whatever they wanted to say. And then I believe another time there was an email that came through, and I want to say, if I remember correctly, it was emailed to all of the board at that point. What the policy does say is that when a whistleblower complaint comes in, it would be up to the superintendent and the attorney to investigate it. So at that point, it then gets turned over. It's not something that we would investigate. It would be something that that the superintendent or Ms. Envil would investigate at that point.
Perhaps we should clarify the policy to make the board's attorney the designee to receive whistleblower complaints.
I just don't know if all citizens would know that right away, and that's an issue. Citizens and employees need to know that. And when most times, their first attempt is to come to the board. If they have a complaint, they typically come to the board. So although I think that would be, I like that. I like that idea. I just don't know that it would be feasible and practical in all circumstances.
Well, I think the way it could be worded would be if somebody came to the superintendent automatically has to turn over to the attorney.
Which I would expect that he would do.
I can tell you that is the practice from HR. So no matter if it comes through the state agency, if it came out in a public meeting, or if it came through, all whistleblower reports would be directed to Ms. Envol through, from HR standpoint. That is our practice.
So I have one more thing on whistleblowers. So sometimes they say it in good faith, and sometimes they might be trying to get another employee in trouble, right? So it's not just one way. And we need to make sure that we're looking at that and any punishment that goes with it. And that's not your job. Your job is to figure it out and then give it to him for,
Exactly. And then we'd follow
Or
whatever HR policies that we have in
Okay.
place. Absolutely.
okay.
One last thing, Mr. Sir. Mr. Green, how many whistleblower reports have we had since you've been here?
I'm not aware of any
Okay.
formal whistleblower reports. We've had work-related
I just
issues.
remember they did go through HR before, and then they would go to the attorney and the superintendent, so.
So you said formal. Is there a form that they have to fill out?
No, no whistleblower reports.
Okay. So if somebody came to the superintendent and they said, you know, I caught this and I saw this or whatever, then that's made into an official report
That would be a
goes.
whistleblower report if it was alleging that someone was doing something with malfeasance, illegal, fraud. That would be turned into a whistleblower report, whether they put it on an official or not. We would-
Well, that's my question is, for legal reasons, should there be a form or should they have to put it in writing or not?
So I think there's two schools of thought. I mean, I think many districts have a form just because it makes it a little bit easier. Hey, you filled out the form, it's going to go through this process, it's going to go to this person, it's kind of for tracking better. But the statute don't necessarily require us to have a form, and we don't necessarily want to hamstring someone who wants to make a report. Perhaps maybe they're not good writers, maybe they don't have an email address, maybe they don't have, we can take them in any form that we get them. Sometimes people are still old school and print it out and drop it off at the front office, right? So I think that we don't want to limit them from doing it, but we certainly could create a form that they could fill out if we want
Well,
to.
the reason why I ask that is, I'm going to be very careful how I word this. Years ago, I knew of one, and it was told to a superintendent, and yet I don't know if it ever got resolved or taken care of or anything like that. There was no feedback. If we had a form, then, in a formal way to do it, then there would be some form that they'd have to give feedback. That's the only reason why I think it's a good thing to have a form.
Well, I think, Madam Chair, I think that your point is well taken. I also think that a lot of times if sometimes it's educating, like they might have, I will tell you, a whistleblower complaint I got at another district. It was that the chicken nuggets were stale. That's not I had to write back an email that says, Dear Chicken Nugget 123@gmail.com. This is not a whistleblower complaint. So sometimes having a form or some sort of intake to let them know, please address your concern with the school, the food and nutrition services at the school, and let our person at the district know as well. And sometimes having a form with what this whistleblower statute says kind of is helpful. And if they can go, oh, that's really not what I'm looking for. I really just need to, I have a concern about the school, in which case then we can have the form say, check with your principal.
All right, then, one more follow-up to what I'm saying about the form. Whether or not we have a form or not, there needs to be some sort of feedback to the person that brought it up.
Absolutely.
And I'll be making sure that that's in here, because I looked at this, but I need to look at it a little more carefully to make sure that's going to happen.
So just so you know, internally, when I get a whistleblower complaint, which I have not gotten here, there are certain timelines in the statute that I have to follow. So within 20 days, I have to do this. I usually will acknowledge it right away and let them know we're taking a look at it and then give them a final.
I mean, we do
one or
that
the other.
when a student says they're being bullied.
And we do it with anything else too,
Yeah.
involving employee issues or
Right.
whatever, so.
So why aren't we doing that?
Because I don't think
We
we've had any.
We haven't had any.
I know.
We haven't had anything.
In the past, we have. And,
No, I mean,
you
recent,
know,
yeah.
I just think that it's not good policy to not tell somebody that's complaining about something that they get feedback on it,
Right.
correct?
So-
Okay.
So you're,
Dr. Pasco was
I'm
next.
sorry.
I just want to ask a question about legal sufficiency. Part of legal sufficiency, would that be complying with, what was I going to say? Time limit, statute of limitations, which I believe is 60 days for public employees and 2 years for private
they have a certain amount of time that they're supposed to report it to us in. I mean, just because they report it untimely doesn't mean that there might not be a systemic issue in the district. So
Right.
it might not qualify for whistleblower protection, but it certainly
Right.
is something that the superintendent should look at to make sure that it's not happening on a more frequent basis. But yes, there's usually, like I said, I have a
Yeah, the
checklist that
Florida-
I usually
The
use.
Florida Public Whistleblower Act describes the statute of limitation as 60 days for public employees. So this would be an example of your complaint could be true, but it was more than 60 days ago, so you're not actually under the whistleblower protection. Just an example of it.
I will tell you, in some larger districts that I have been at, we always saw an increase of whistleblower complaints right before appointment time or non-reappointment time. And so,
Go ahead.
So I'm going to follow up with Dr. Posca. So is that time limit based on the moment that the person acknowledges that there is an issue, or the moment in which the person recognizes or realizes there is a whistleblower protection for them? Because sometimes they might witness something and not know that that we have this policy to protect them. And, and I've had conversations with people in the past who have said, well, I didn't know that my job could be protected. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely.
It's from the action.
So then at that point, it's from the action.
Okay. Mr. Dyer?
Mine was along the line of Dr. Pasta's. It may not be legally sufficient, but it may still be something that we need to follow up on. I mean, the only question in a corporate world, I've had a whistleblower that wound up costing the company $30 million, which was frivolous because somebody was under an audit themselves and was trying to trade away some protections, and $30 million later, it was dismissed. So I can say that it worked. A legitimate whistleblower for legally sufficient or means definitely needs to be protected, but there are instances when the company needs protection too, or the district or the organization needs protection. So I think it works both ways, but I think that for you to understand, to me, it's important that it comes through you, so you could advise somebody that's not legally, we don't believe that's legally sufficient. And we can still carry on, but it may not be under whistleblower protections. It just seems like that to tighten up this policy a little bit may be good for everybody. I don't know.
Yes.
Okay, considering all of the conversation that we've had, I'd like to make an amendment to this. I'd like to add something that is not in here. And the 60-day window, which I did not know of, is not in here. So I think that it would be smart of us to include that it is the responsibility of an employee who is aware of conduct on the part of any board member or employee that possibly violates federal or state law or board policy to call this conduct to the attention of the immediate supervisor within 60 days of the prohibited, yeah, whatever the language would be. This way, beyond our tenure, it would be codified in this policy that way. Is that appropriate?
So I would like to, if I will, through the chair, I'd like to look at what the statute says
Sure.
and make sure we track that language. But if we can, what I'm hearing from you all is that I want to make sure that you're all on the same page, giving a timeline within which they have to report it within the whistleblower protection. I don't think that statute has changed much over the past decade, at least I remember. But adding the timeline in there if it's appropriate in the policy, or referring to the timeline in the statute. But I'd like to have some sort of, I understand your thing with the timeline. I think
Sure.
that's an
I mean, if
important
there is
thing.
no timeline captured, I mean, if the timeline was removed and it's not within 60 days, then I'm totally okay with the way that it is now.
I
But
agree
if
with
there
looking
is
at
a
the statute.
timeline, I'd rather be able to capture it in the policy, further protect the employee, so that they are not accused of submitting a frivolous, charge unnecessarily, or whatever the case might be after that.
So is that what I'm hearing? You'd like
If
to add a
it's-
timeline?
If it
we have
aligns with the state law,
Right.
yeah, I'm fine with it.
Agree.
Yep, we could do that.
Do you have anything else other than whistleblowing? Okay.
Oh, yes, I did have
I
another,
had one other.
another policy, not whistleblower.
Okay, hold on, she was still,
But does that stifle a legitimate concern that we should investigate that, you know, by putting that in there, that we should investigate that we don't hear about? Because it seems to be past the 60 days. It may not be qualify to be a whistleblower, but it may be something we should still look at.
Right.
So I think we got to,
Balance.
you need to help us on this one and think
Right.
about it, but there seems to be a little bit of questioning with the way it's written.
okay, something else?
Yeah, we have a hotline and email. We have an anonymous reporting system that we set up, going to say maybe a couple of years ago. And it was important for us at the time to set something up so that employees can report something anonymously without their name. I guess Ms. Christofoli could maybe talk about it without their name being reported. And of course, in this particular case, if there is a concern, we could all just reroute that person to this, I don't know if it's an email or a portal. What is it that we have?
Through the chair. So on our district website, anyone can email the district. You don't have to say who it is, and give information, and when the district receives that, gets routed to the appropriate cabinet member. We also have Fortify Florida, which can be used for anything, for anyone. Just don't make sure it's not a false report.
Right.
Because we have new statute language for that, but anyone could use that, including parents, teachers, students.
Is it used? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. You said, is it used?
Yes, it's used very often, and we regularly
can tell
get, maybe not, I'm looking at Jaime, maybe not daily, but 4 times a week, we're getting Fortify
Okay,
tips.
good.
And they follow up on all of them right away, so.
Yep.
All right, anything else?
Yeah, I did have another one, a different policy. If you can give me a quick second, let me get there, please. Okay, it was a comment on policy 3120, and a follow-up to a conversation that I had with Mr. Green about guest educators. A few years ago, we switched a couple of policies, renamed our substitute teachers as guest educators, and now we're going back to substitute teachers. So I'm glad to see that this language is added here, and that we are going back to substitute teachers. I just think that it makes sense. The language in our statute says substitute, not guest educator, and the language in our employee contracts says substitutes, and even that online portal or the online sub request line, whatever that online is that the teachers use to get a substitute, if they're going to be absent, they address subs as subs, not guest educators. So I'm glad to see that we're going back to that language.
Anything else? No. Okay. So I had that as my second item too. My first one was whistleblower, so we got that covered. Second one was about sub-teachers versus guest educators, so we need to look across all our policies to make sure that we're using the same term. I do know that different groups across the state use different ones. Some call them guest educators, some call them subs, so I'm not quite sure how that all started. Payroll deductions. So I was shocked to hear this, and I don't think board members might not know this, but we have people that no-show at our health clinic, right? And they'll make an appointment and then they won't show up, but we get charged for it. What's the fee for that, so you can tell them?
$150 for a no-show, that's an appointment charge. We allow people to cancel up to 5 minutes before the appointment. Of course, the first time is no charge. That's a courtesy reminder, and then after that, it's a charge.
So we get the $150 fee, though, if they cancel 5 minutes before?
No.
Okay,
It's if they cancel, if they just don't show up to the appointment, but you
Okay.
can, they will allow you to cancel, right? So they can just try to fill other people in, call somebody that's waiting in the waiting room, try to shift those times around. But if they get no indication and they've just lost a 15 or 30-minute block for prescription refill, then we're charged for those no-shows.
so when you're talking about fees, then that people are going to see on payroll deductions, that would be one of them.
That would be a no-show fee after, and they get notifications, they get emails, they get calls from our benefits department, they get multiple communications about those before they would get anything payroll deducted.
And are they told ahead of time that there is that fee that they
Yes.
will get if they no-show? Okay. Yes.
Just to follow up with Chair Berenborg, I sat in on a couple of high-tech meetings, and when we were looking at insurance rates and so forth, that was one of the reasons, or one of the maybe ideas, because I can't remember what the cost was for that for a year. Do you remember, Mr. Green, how many no-shows? And
It's like $35,000
Right.
That's what
a
made me go
year.
low.
And
Right, so then they will get they will have, it won't come back to the district, it would come back to the person, and they have up to 5 minutes before to cancel.
Yes.
Because we all know there could be issues, we know that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay with that going through because, you know, we're sitting there on one hand talking about how expensive health insurance is, but on the other hand, we have employees no showing and then letting us pay the $150. So I think they need to be responsible. It's kind of like showing up without your homework and saying your dog ate it, you know? It's, at least give us the benefit of that 5-minute courtesy of making a call. The category A docs, that is really, that's shared across the whole state, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and the reason why that's really great change is because I know as a principal, when I had a student that had a threat or had something happen, and then it was totally absolved, and then they went to middle school and they went to high school, I'd hear from that principal, well, why didn't you put anything in the file? And I said, because I can't, you know, it can't go in there after a certain amount of time. So it's good that we're doing that for mental health reasons for students too. You know, if you've got a student that's doing the same pattern over and over again, obviously at some point, this child needs some mental health intervention. So I'm glad to hear that that's being shared, but it's only across the state, right? It's not interstate. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's a problem because I dealt with a few of them, and even parents that were going from state to state to state because they had prior problems like abuse and things like that. And then they come to our state and we don't know anything about any prior child abuse or anything. We need to do better with communicating, and I know that's a higher level than us. But that's something I think maybe I need to talk to our state senators and state Congress people about, because that's a real issue where kids are not being tracked and they can be lost. And, you know, Florida is one of the biggest offenders of that,
Come to us.
of kids being lost in the system. And where did they go? You know, every year when we look at enrollment and we say, well, we didn't have this number of kids and we don't know where they are, that's a concern. Where are those kids? You know, somebody knows, somebody's got it somewhere. So that's just another issue I wanted to bring up. And then wireless devices. So no wireless devices on buses, which is great. I was here when that horrible bus accident happened. As a matter of fact, I heard it because I was at Dodgertown at the time and it happened out there. Yep. Those of you that don't know, we had children die because of it and a bus driver. And they were checking their phone, looking down to check their phone. So I'm glad that got put in place right away here, but it didn't necessarily across the state. However, we're looking at, I believe, voting very soon on an item that's going to allow our bus drivers to hear left turn, right turn, just like you would with your cell phone and getting directions to go someplace. How are they going to manage that if there's no wireless device?
So just to be clear, in this bus operator certification, it's using a wireless handheld as a handheld device, meaning you're not viewing a screen that has navigation, you're actually engaging on the device in a handheld method. You're texting.
So will that device then that is on a screen, will that automatically just show which way they don't
That's
have
it.
to do this, right?
That's correct. It'll just bring their route up, and as they turn, such as an Amazon delivery, it will show right turn, left turn. If the bus is rerouted during the day for some reason, one broke down, we've got to move some kids over, their route just automatically, they won't know the difference. It'll just tell them a new route, left turn, right turn. So it's a
And
navigation.
will it tell them too, so they don't have to look at the
The
device?
tablet has sound, but it's not to be interacted with physically. It's just a visual device such as your display or your dashboard.
Yeah,
on
I'd
the
like to
bus.
see it once we get there. Just because that was horrible, and I never want to see that happen again, where somebody's, they're averting their eyes away from what they should be doing. Thank you.
And the next section is Ms. Krista Foley, School Leadership and Management.
Okay, so I have 17 policies. We'll try to get through these quickly. The first policy is Policy 100. This is a staff edit, and this is really to clarify language about what is a wireless communication device. We've done such a great job in the past 2 years as far as our cell phone policy, and we want to keep it that way. And over Christmas, we had many students buy Meta glasses. So if you look, you'll see that this one policy, we went from one sentence to more of a robust paragraph, being very explicit about what is a wireless communication device. It also will match what is in the Code of Conduct. And then my next 5 are all the same. This is in reference to adding language which requires instruction to discourage students from using tobacco. 1215 covers administration, 3215 covers instructional, 4215 covers support staff, 5512 covers students, and 7434 covers property. So this policy is adding language that we will have deterrent instruction for using tobacco products. Next policy is 2260. This is non-discrimination and access to equal education opportunity. This is an added section that explicitly tells how compliance officers' names, that information of how do we reach them will be published, and it states employee handbook and the district website, and then also addresses any interim measures that took place and that they have to be documented just like anything else. 2371 is the Hope Scholarship Policy, and as you know, any student that is subjected to an incident of violence or bullying at a school, and there are multiple specifics of what that looks like, makes them eligible. What they did in this policy is they just added a timeline language. So previously it stated that upon the conclusion of the investigation, they made it more clear and put or within 15 days after the incident was reported, whichever occurs first. Okay. 2266 is, okay, I'm just going down my thing. 2266, non-discrimination on the basis of sex in education programs and activities. This is an added section on the informal resolution process. So if it was a case where there was a possibility of having an informal resolution, there's very specific language about how that will be done. However, if there is a complaint, student to student, it will always go to a formal process. And then along with that, they changed a term, fondling to criminal sexual conduct, and all of the grammatical and language corrections that Mr. Green stated, the professional development to professional learning, the staff or any staff group is now employee, and any spelling out of Florida DOE to Department of Education, we're just going to bunch those under these language revisions. 2410, this was another staff edit, and this was simply to align what we do in health rooms to the policy. So this is basically saying that in our health rooms, we carry sanitary napkins and not tampons. So that's all that was, that we just wanted to align what we do. 5330.01, epinephrine, anaphylaxis, and self-administered medications. So this policy revision incorporates amendments to statute on the use of the auto-injectors and diabetes management. There's grammatical errors, and then there's an addition of very explicit emergency allergen treatment, educational training programs, and then the emergency action plans that we use with students. So this is that policy, just revisions to adding, a lot of it is mostly about the emergency allergen treatment. 5780, again, this is the student parental rights policy. So anytime that we change a policy elsewhere, we add that change into the student parental rights policy. So they've taken that anaphylaxis language and added that hypoglycemic emergency language. They put that in the student and parental rights policy, so that it's, again, very transparent. 5350, this is the student suicide prevention awareness and screening. These are minor language changes. Again, the employee instead of staff or employee instead of administrators. And then they did add how we contact parents when one of these things happen. They added one line at the end, and I just want to make sure I say this correctly. They added one line that states, I'm going to beat Michelle to it. When a suicide risk assessment results in a change in related services, a student's parents must be notified as soon as possible unless notification is withheld or delayed, and that could be for if there's a weekend, I don't know. But if they added that line, that was a Neola recommendation. We are moving on to 5530. This is drug prevention. Again, minor language changes. This policy, they basically said, we're going to put the policy number first and then what the policy number is called. That was it. 8141, mandatory reporting of misconduct. They added a statutory notification of the statute 435.042, which that statute lists all of the reasons that you must report. And then the language upstates, this is another instance where they're spelling out Department of Education instead of just Florida DOE. 8512, this is our wellness policy. Again, employee instead of staff, development instead of learning, and they added a statute, some just language revisions. And then 8600, this is the transportation policy. This is the recommended language regarding school bus infraction detection systems and any administrative hearing process from that. We currently do not have a school bus infraction detection system. I know this has been a topic, and Jaime has been having conversations with the Sheriff's Department. These would be the cameras on the outside of the bus. So we are accepting these language changes because we are exploring this, and we just want to have it in place should we ever get to that. So that is why we have that on there. So those are my 17 policies.
All right, anybody?
Just one more question.
Yes.
Ms. Christofoli, do you happen to know, and I know we've had the Hope Scholarship for a while, how many of our students have Hope Scholarships? I know that's just off the cuff.
I do not off the cuff, but I can absolutely
Okay.
check with
Thank you.
our student services. They would absolutely know that information.
Thank you.
So I have two comments. One is that it's nice to see so many smoking tobacco policies. When I was in high school, we had a smoking area for students, so we've come a long way.
Yes, we called
The
it the
cameras,
block.
yeah, the cameras on the side of the bus, that's something I brought up maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, and we still aren't there yet. Is it because of cost? Is it because of them having to follow through with the tickets? Because it seemed pretty easy with one of the companies.
I believe it's the latter. I have been asking the Sheriff's Office to see if they can look into it, because there is part of the process, it is burdensome on them because they need to have a process in case somebody wants to fight administratively this citation. So that process is on them to figure out. So I think that the ball's on their court to kind of figure out how that process is going to move forward. And then they're going to present us with
Yeah, I mean, funding-wise, they get the money, but we get the peace of mind not seeing people blast through our school zones or around our buses, which I still see happen. It really bothers me when somebody goes around a bus, or when a bus is stopped, they just blow right through. I saw one again. So it's happening a lot more than people think.
yes.
Anybody else? We're good? Okay.
Thank you.
Safe schools?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Green, Madam Chair. As required by state statute and Florida Rule 6A1.0018, I'm required to provide the board an update on our safe schools and our inspections. So far, we have had, through all 3 quarters, 10 schools inspected. That is 36% of all our schools, including charter schools. This particular quarter, we've had 2 schools inspected, with one of them had a a deficiency where a door was found to be unlocked. However, that door was immediately locked. It was addressed, and the issue should never come up again because that school was retrofitted with the self-locking door mechanisms. So that issue should not come up again anymore. That being said, I have nothing else further to provide.
So the door propping, you weren't here when I was a couple years ago on that because I see it all the time, not now, but I saw it when I was in the schools and working, and especially in the back when they're loading the groceries in for food services. And, instead of opening the door every time, people were just, propping it open and no one's checking to see who's walking in and out. We're on that, right? We don't have that happening.
Yeah, I mean, a door could be open if somebody is staffing that door, if somebody's present at or near the door. However, it should not be willy-nilly open without somebody anywhere near that door. So if that is happening, people need to notify me, notify the principal to make sure that we are addressing that immediately.
Okay.
One question, Ms. Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Alberti, how many security monitors do we have on our high school campuses now? Because I know there's been a great improvement on that door issue.
Yeah, we have about 9.
9 at each campus, okay, all right, thank you.
They're big campuses.
Data sharing.
All right, so for item C, the data sharing agreement. So this agreement is an agreement between the school board and the sheriff's office, the city of Sebastian, and the city of Vero Beach that supports school safety efforts and sharing information. The agreement is established between our agencies to make sure to provide like a legal framework that we can share information, limited student information, such as name, address, date of birth, that is permitted under FERPA and Florida law. This agreement stipulates that information should be kept confidential and used only for authorized purposes while doing an investigation or any kind of law enforcement actions being taken.
All right, I have some questions about this, and I'll tell you why. I was just recently dealing with one on the phone where a parent was upset because their child was involved in a fight, and another parent was able to watch the video, and other kids were in the video. So I thought we don't allow that.
So the sharing of the video to a parent, and I was just talking to Ms. Christofoli this last week, we need to make sure we put it in practice that it could be allowed to be shown to a parent, it just cannot record it. They cannot take away any type of recording of the video. We're gonna embed this process into the administrative hearing in case the parent wants to, I guess, argue the discipline of the student, but I'll work with Ms. Ambal to make sure that our process is solid and it's something that we're permitted to do.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening in this case. So I wanted to make sure that we were being consistent across the board of allowing parents to see video or not where other children's faces were in it. I'm not sure, there are statutes there, I'm sure, that we need to make sure that we're, yeah.
Under FERPA, if it is used, sorry, I want to make sure I'm on. If it is used as the basis of discipline, we can allow, if we have a video, we can allow the parent to have it. They just can't, we need a subpoena or a court order to release a copy of it. But just as Mr. Alberti said, if they're going to, they can't, we're not passing it around, but if it is used as the basis of discipline, we do usually let them see it.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're being consistent and we're following the laws and, because there was that concern from the parent that some people get to do that and some people don't. I just want to make sure that we're being consistent. And then you mentioned another one, that was, I'm trying to remember. I forgot it. We're good. Anybody else?
Ms. Basura.
Good afternoon, through the chair. In accordance with School Board Policy 2340, we are to request board approval for any out-of-state field trips. This is a very exciting one for us, and many of you helped stand on the stage and deliver many of these awards at our regional or at our local science fair. We have a 10th grader at Vero Beach High School who was awarded a bid to the International Science Fair, which takes place May 10th through the 15th in Phoenix, Arizona. So we're requesting permission for her to attend that. She will be chaperoned by her father. All of the expenses have been paid by donation through the Indian River Ed Fund, and so we're just very excited for her.
So I've been to the International Fair a couple of times. I've been to the one in Phoenix in May. It's hotter than you know what. They need to stay on that train that goes back and forth. It's air conditioned because it's unbelievable just walking one block how hot that is. Extremely exciting for them. The parent is going?
Yes.
Okay. It's nice when we can send a teacher, only because they have education opportunities out there for the adults. So I really wish we would do that, but I know that costs another hotel room, so it is more expensive to send a teacher.
Yes.
Next item is Ms. Crisafulli.
Through the chair, so I'm excited to present this next item. This is the bus planner suite. This is additional modules to the contract we already have in place with bus planner. There are 5 additional models. I'm just going to go through each of the 5 quickly. Number 1 is the GPS plus fleet management system. We currently use Zonar to know where our buses are when we refer to GPS. This will save us money from what we're spending on Zonar by replacing Zonar and having all of these in the same with the same vendor. So that would provide real-time historical tracking of the buses, on-time performance monitoring. We do these things at this time, but we're excited to save money and have it all together. So number 2 is the student ridership management. This tracks and verifies student ridership in real time. So it allows drivers to confirm correct bus assignments. It enables the district to compare planned versus actual ridership. This system we currently are using, you have to have a chip in their swipe. We won't have to do that. They can have a QR code and they could even use their phone and have the QR code just boop on the phone. So there's multiple ways. It also, if the student doesn't have their ID, it's easier for the bus driver to enter that, yes, the student just got on the bus. So we're excited about that. The third one is the one I know we're all very excited about. This is the Chipmunk Parent Communication app, and this will allow parents to get the app and know exactly where their student is and see an estimated time of where they are and how, when they will be arriving. So it offers families, for the audience, real-time bus tracking, estimated arrival times, customizable alerts, just like we do in Focus. You can decide what alerts you get, and notifications on when the students get on and when they get off the bus. So this will significantly enhance the parent engagement and transparency. And all of this was really brought on by our innovation and the need for the combining of schools and having to optimize these routes to be able to provide parents in the district with the best possible outcome. And then once we got into looking at the optimizing routing software, we're like, okay, wait a minute. What else could we get? What else can we use? So the parent, for me, the parent communication piece is huge. The 4th module is the dispatch system. So this is real-time coordination. So it enables transportation staff to identify, hey, this happened, where's the nearest available bus? Sometimes we do that if there was an accident and it's, not that happens often, but we're gonna have to wait until the police come, and it might be 15 minutes, but sometimes it's gonna be 30. They'll be able to see, oh, we're gonna send this bus over to pick up those kids and get them to school as soon as possible. So communicating directly with drivers, improving response time, and then the 5th is the turns, what you were referring to earlier. So this is the turns navigation system. At this time, we do not have any technology on the bus besides the cameras that would assist the driver in where am I going. So if you have a substitute or you just got a new student and they're unfamiliar with the area, it does add time of, hey, where am I going? And they're on the radio saying, this is just will streamline that. So it provides turn-by-turn navigation, real-time updates is what you were talking about, and support for the substitute and unfamiliar routes. So this really will address consistency and reducing driver error. We bring those 5 additional modules to our current contract that we have with Bus Planner, and that will be upcoming at this board meeting.
Yes.
Just thank you very much, Ms. Crisafulli. My grandson in Texas has had that parent communication. So
Wonderful.
parents knew where he was on the bus, where it was traveling, just going to be wonderful for our parents. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Yes.
So I think the parent app, the Chipmunk, I think that's going to be a game changer because that's most of the issue is, parents saying, where is my child? And being able to track the bus that the child is on using that app. It just seems, that part of it just seems like a no-brainer. The cost of this, looks pretty steep. Does this come out of, is this a capital expense? Yes, this is capital.
I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Green.
Yeah.
The initial installation and all the equipment, the $180,000 you see listed is capital and a one-time. That's from the roll forward dollars we rolled forward for innovation. And then when you see yearly service subscriptions, those are the annual. However, as Ms. Krista Foley said, the GPS, which is roughly $37,000 or $39,000, is offset by the Zonar that we would swap out. So it's not, the operating is not as much as it appears.
So we would swap it out one for the other.
Yes.
The other question that I had a couple of years ago, we invested in the, I don't remember the name, but in something that goes on the bus where the students can use their ID and attendance would be taken for the student getting on and off the bus using their ID.
Yes.
Does that also get swapped out? Or are we
Yes.
keeping both? Because I heard of the QR code and some other means for
It'll be
checking a
swapped,
student.
it'll be swapped out.
Swapped out. So what would have been used to cover the previous, I forget the name of it, but that previous program for the student IDs are no longer going to be a financial requirement for us,
That's
right?
correct, and that current system requires an RFID chip, where this system can take RFID, it can take a barcode, it can take a scanner, so there's more cost-effective ways to do it with just a barcode using this system.
However, that ID system that we purchased a couple of years ago at the school level also allowed us or the student to check out library books, to pay for their cafeteria, or to use it to see what the cafeteria, what they owed in their cafeteria bill. Not sure exactly if that's still being used for that, and of course, as an ID system for us. So what I'm hearing is all of those other components for the ID system that we purchased a couple of years ago will still be used in the school system as is, with the exception of this one part on the bus. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, as I talked with Bruce, I think it's a great idea. It's going to be terrific for parents. My only concern was the automatically renewing at 5% increase every year. That sounded steep to me, and I think that we need to go back and talk to them. Normally when you'd have an automatic renewal, it would be somewhere 3 to 4%, somewhere in there. It just seemed like it was a little high, and we ought to take a look at that.
We will be reaching out prior to the board meeting to see what we can negotiate on that as well.
Great.
So I have a question about the QR code thing. So each child will have their own QR code?
So through the chair, similarly to you saying, can't wait to see the turn by turn. I have not seen any of this yet, so as soon as we have it, I'm going to pretend I work in transportation and learn all the systems so I can present to all of you.
I have
But Bruce has it.
on my ID, and when I
Yes.
go into the schools,
That's
that
what,
barcode scans.
that's what I was going to ask, if they're going to put that on the ID, because not every child has their phone and should have their phone out
Yes,
on the
it'll be
bus.
both.
Okay. Because if we're telling them, we're discouraging phones at school, but we're saying, bring your phone and scan it, that's kind of a mixed message.
Just, and true, I was saying that as they come, they don't have this, could they possibly, is it back up to the bus driver having to stall
Yeah.
and enter it? We just want to have multiple ways, so.
And just
We're
to be-
getting closer and closer to the chip in the head, aren't we?
And just to be clear, the transportation scanning system is the only one of those components that require an RFID. The ones in the cafeteria and media can just take a barcode. So we'll be able to buy cheaper student IDs and still be able to scan them.
And could we please, for our little ones, have the little, clips or something, because.
The lanyard clip thing?
Yeah, the
Yes.
lanyards are this long on them. they're really long.
So, if no other questions, the items F through K are all mine. Item F is the instructional and non-instructional work calendar. As you know, the board approved the student instructional calendar, says when our students are going to be in school. This takes all of our groups, whether instructional or non-instructional, whether they're 180-day all the way up to 250-day employees, and lays them out on a calendar so they know when they're to report to work, when they're off on a holiday, and what days they get paid for. The IRCEA and CWA have both reviewed these as per contract. Those will be coming forward on the next board meeting for approval. Item G is the renewal of agreement. That's just 2 walk-in freezers.
Hold on,
You know.
I think she has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I did, you went straight through. So this, I guess my comment and question isn't specific to the item that's up here. It's still regarding school year calendar or calendar school year. This year, what I heard is that Brevard County is bringing an item to their board to shorten the end of their school year because they didn't have use up any of their emergency days. Have you heard about that? Is that something that we are considering here? Interested to bring that topic to discussion, or not to discussion, to you.
Before you answer
Mr.
that, because I was going to bring that up too, we have to have, what, 186 days? Is that still the number for students in
We have to have seat time.
seat time? Okay. So that's why they're able to do that, correct? Because they've had enough seat time?
Instructional time. It's different for kindergarten, the 900 hours, and then for the rest, there's a certain amount. That's why the old days, it was always 6 50-minute periods equaled 300 minutes, and that's how you got those traditional 6 50-minute periods, was to make sure you added up to enough seat time,
So they,
instructional time.
sorry, so they are claiming that they have met, or they potentially would, I don't know when they're going to have this discussion, but they have met the required instructional time for their schools. Have we met that? Are we discussing it? Are we looking into it?
Well, just
What-
remember, we already do that efficiency. We only have 178 student days. Most districts have 180, and then so they could shave some of that off. We've already done that efficiency. We're at 178 if you look at our instructional calendar.
So just as a quick update,
Oh, I
this is
forgot he
not
was
something we're looking at. As Bruce just mentioned, we gave up 2 instructional days to ensure our teachers have the appropriate amount of time to plan and prepare lessons to meet the unique needs of all the diverse learners in their classroom. Additionally, the burden that would place on families at such a late notice to say, go and find coverage or childcare for your children. If we, each and every single day, whether it's the first day or the last day, is an opportunity for us to connect and engage and invest in our children. And we look forward to doing that for every single day that we have them.
Thank you.
Good answer.
And item G is the review of contracted services for 2 walk-in cooler freezers. Those you approved in January when we approved the capital 5-year plan. That's Liberty Magnet and Treasure Coast Elementary, roughly $99,000 each. Complete Restaurant Equipment was the most responsive bidder for both of those. Item H.
Wait, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
When we're consolidating schools, are there things like this, that might be too expensive to move, right? Or it can't be moved, but things like this that we're looking at in those particular buildings that we could access?
Already working on moving lines and steamers and anything we possibly can move that fit in and are still up to code. These are some of those built-in units that are very, very old, and they have a lot of electrical stuff and usually are designed for that specific area. But yes, we are looking at all the equipment we can move to other buildings, and we've already started some of that.
Yeah, my neighbor's one of the plant operators, and he says they're doing everything with a smile, even though there's so much more work that's being added, so I appreciate all the work they're doing.
Appreciate it. The next item, H, is H and I go together. Again, if you look at your capital 5-year plan, then you'll see under Beachland and you'll see under Treasure Coast Technical College painting. The painting at Treasure Coast Technical College is $84,948. There is a $7,700 contingency fee in there, $109,000 at Beachland with a $9,900 contingency fee. Both of those buildings will be scheduled for exterior painting. Sometimes you just see Beecham from the road, you see the boat, but there's all the buildings in the back, the older, so this is when we get envelope problems and moisture problems. Item J, the final payment to Remnant Construction for one of our single point of entries that we've discussed in your board briefings. That has been completed, and a final payment of $18,000.03 is due. We will make that payment. And item K is our surplus property. This time it is literally 25 smart boards. One's 25 years old, one's 21 years old, and the rest are all 13-year-old out of Pelican Island Classical Magnet. We have changed those out to the ViewSonic boards, and if any of you were at the Sphero Meta Blazers competition on Saturday at Sebastian River High School, which was a packed house, you would see that we had those ViewSonic boards with cameras down over the mat so the parents could watch their children do the competition. That's what's replaced these smart boards, and there was one old eye vision testing machine from Student Services, and that wraps up my items, Madam Chair.
Anybody? Go ahead.
Mr. Green, would you review, even for the public, the money that we set aside to help us with all the moves this summer, to make sure that that's all going well, and are all the, I mean, do we have the money to do all of this, and it came from capital, correct?
Yes, so if you recall, if we go back to the budget season, you recall me sharing with you and pointing out like a 12% increase in the capital budget. Right. We only get around $45 to $48 million in capital, but the budget was higher than that. It was around 80 million. Some of that was projects. Now remember, when we start a project today, for example, that project is going to roll over into the next budget if we don't close it out in the current fiscal year. So if it's a $100,000 playground project and it goes over to July 1st, that $100,000 is going to show in the next year's budget until that's completed. So we took the dollars, and as I pointed out, the contingencies for the two paintings, $7,700 and $9,900. We just ended a project the other day. We didn't use the contingency fees. We came in $19,000 under budget. Those dollars we set aside. For example, when Vero Beach High School, when the light fell on the stands and we needed to replace the LED lights, or the inspection said, hey, the 20, 30, 40-year-old stands on the other side they need replaced. We use those. So what we have done is pulled those together into a specific innovation category under capital. Yep. That's what we're using. We'll be bringing reports to the board. We've already started. You'll see a playground and a half is done at Storm Grove for a K2 and a 3-5 playground. And as well, if you remember, we did not purchase the 10 buses that we scheduled, so that things like bus planner, the capital items are coming out of that. So no projects are affected. It is roll forward dollars that we've put aside and planned for very strategically for the innovation project.
Thank you.
I find it funny that you call innovation when we're replacing stands that are old.
Well, no, I said that was just how we use some of the reserve dollars. That wasn't in our innovation project.
So innovation is things like the new playgrounds.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yes, Mr. Dyer.
Just on a topic while we have the superintendent, his section, a lot of us attended that Gifford, I don't know if this is the right section or discussion, I think it's just him updating. Is that appropriate at this point?
We're in his updates.
Okay. Well, a lot of us attended that Gifford Night of the Arts, and we found a pretty dynamic group of moms from that school that are out to update it and make it pretty spectacular. Also, I was at the Sphero event on Saturday, and I know we've had a substantial donation to that, to the robotics and coding. And I heard word that there's somebody that may be interested in doing a trail around the Jimmy Graves area. So my question is I wondered if the superintendent could just update us on where we are with some of the maybe this is a Ed Foundation update. I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just on some of the fundraising that's going on. Just tell us a little bit about what is happening.
Absolutely. Through the chair, a lot of exciting momentum taking place around our fund. As you know, Ms. Knupp came on just over 2 years ago, made a commitment to get us off the ground, establish the fund, go out and recruit a top-notch board, and that's exactly what she delivered on. So we are in the process now of modifying the job description. We had a very unique job description. We've modified that job description, and we'll bring it to the board for approval. That clearly identifies that this is an executive director to help raise and provide funds to educate our community's children. When we created the fund, the initiative, as you all know, was around two specific areas: leadership, investing in world-class educational leaders, providing resources and support for our principals, for our district administrators, really to improve their ability to lead, not to manage, but to lead. And as a result of that leadership, just create this need for innovation. And the theory of action was straightforward, and we're seeing it delivered here at Gifford Middle School. The principal was, in fact, in the Leadership Institute, promoted to principal, and now is inspiring a great deal of reform and transformation at that school with the Gala Initiative, which is the gifted programming for those students. And a group of parents are very, very excited about coming together, organizing, and looking at opportunities to enhance the experience at our school site, to fund the innovation, the ideas that are in place at that particular school. We are also in the process of looking at how we identify across the system, not school individually, but across the totality of the system, naming rights, whether it is the funding of an innovation classroom at a specific school, whether it is a gymnasium, what are those specific opportunities to engage in the giving or supporting this innovation that our principals are feverishly wanting to get funded. And as Mr. Dyer mentioned, we are in the final stages, design stages of moving into the next phase for the Graves property, which would be the walking trail, and we'll be excited to push that out and continue to build momentum. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's actually something I asked him to put on the next business meeting,
Oh,
was an
okay,
update,
good,
yeah,
good.
an update from the Ed Fund. So if that's you, that's great, but, you know, just to give all of us some understanding of what's going on and what's been done, and also so the community knows. A lot of people don't know that that's funding's coming from that group, and it would be nice that, you know, they get the credit for that.
There seems to be a lot of momentum right now, and I'm just hearing things. I mean, I don't know all the specifics on those things either. I'm just seeing a lot of things, and it seems to be a lot of momentum. So I think it'd be good to be on the business meeting.
Good.
Talk about it. Good, thanks.
Good. Yeah, make sure
Yeah.
that's on our next business meeting, please. Okay, so thank you for that. We're going to move on to board member discussions. So
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just as you set this item up, as you know, this is the legislative priorities that the board has in policy to review and begin the process of updating for the upcoming school year. This is the initial conversation. Although Dr. Shafty is in a classroom providing instruction right now, we will take feverishly notes and listen to the conversation to determine if there's any modification changes to our current legislative priorities or the creation of new legislative priorities, and then push that back out to the board for your feedback and then ultimate approval at a later meeting.
Thank you. What was great about this year's platform is when I went to speak to our legislators, there were already some bills going forward that aligned to these perfectly. So it was a really easy discussion on a lot of these. There is one item that FSBA had on their platform that I feel very strongly about that we need to look into, that is kindergarten is mandatory. It is not. You know, it's mandatory to be in first grade, but it's not mandatory to be in kindergarten. And now kindergartners are learning things. I have a grandson that's in kindergarten, and I'm amazed at what he's learning. For example, he knows understanding of multiplication and what division is, and, you know, can count a lot higher than we had to. I looked at my kindergarten requirements. It was to learn your name and to be able to recognize the letters in the alphabet and to count to 20. That was it. Now they're counting over 100, and they're doing so many more things than we did. And I think that a child that doesn't get into kindergarten and they come in first grade, they're already behind the 8 ball. Yep. And by the time they're in 3rd grade, it's going to be hard to catch them up. So that was one thing that I saw on the FSBA platform that I really felt like we should get behind and also add to ours, is making kindergarten mandatory. If it's not in a public school, it's somewhere else, but they need those skills so that they're not behind for reading in third grade. So that was my one item. Anything else that anybody else would like to discuss on this platform that needs to change? Let's go with that first.
Oh, to change?
Yeah, is there anything on here that you feel like, okay, we got that done, we need to move on?
We got that done, we have to move on, you said?
Yeah, if there are some that have, I mean, we haven't gotten all the bills passed, and some have been passed, but they haven't been signed by the governor, so we don't know what's law yet, so we may want to not take something off because of that. But if there's something here that wasn't something you felt like was important or needed.
Oh, may I?
Yes.
I think that a lot of the things that we have on here, we have every year. And it's not moving the needle. How it's worded is particularly not moving the needle. I'm not so sure why. It might be that we are a little too wordy in our presentation of our items. I think that we need to kind of take a look at it from that perspective as well. That said, our priorities really should align with our strategic plan, with the goals and the vision and the mission of our district. If we just have a set of legislative priorities that are not aligned with our goals, then we're just shooting to the wind and, nothing's going to land. We really need to hone in on some of those things that we really do find to be priority, rather than a wish list of things that we want, which could go on and on and on. I think that some of the things that we should keep and reword is the section on expanding local authority to operate with agility. The first bullet there says empower school leaders and educators to implement flexible instructional models, classical education, KA pathways, CTE, and boutique secondary schools. We already have the ability to do that. We have the authority to do these things. So I don't think that we should continue to keep this item on here in this way. I do think that the intent of what we originally wanted to do was have the authority and the flexibility to innovate within these spaces, and potentially select curriculum that wouldn't hamstring us to the DOE's model, that we could, be able to select and create scheduling and maybe timing or, whatever it is that we would want to do. I think we have to reword it. Classical curriculum or curriculum flexibility for high-performing districts. Next year, we will be a truly high-performing districts. I'm claiming that we are going to have all A schools in our district. And so with that said, what legislative support can be provided for high-performing districts? Most of the time, as a state, a lot of communication is focused on failing school districts, but not high-performing school districts. So maybe we need to look at it from that perspective, or reword something along the lines of high-performing school districts can have the authority to select and adopt, implement instructional materials and curricula around classical education or CTE programs or something else, something to that effect. Maybe even high-performing school districts have the autonomy, the autonomy to create a framework that builds on, I don't know, right now I'm drawing a blank, but that builds on something along the lines of what our strategy is. I have some other ideas here, but I'll just leave it at that and get some feedback.
Take one at a time, so that.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying, I'll just leave it there, and maybe we can get some feedback on that.
Okay, so that first one, the very first line, says support legislation that provides a streamlined pathway for academically high-performing districts. So that's what it already says on there. What I think we were getting at was the flexibility for funding.
Correct.
To move funding.
Yeah.
Because right now, if you look at the categoricals, you know, and you have money sitting over here, but you can't spend it on this, we're asking for more flexibility with categoricals in respect to these items that are below, which is, you know, the classical education, the K-8 pathways, the CTE, and so on. Maybe it just needs to be worded a little bit more, less wordy,
Right.
more bullet points.
Right.
But as I recall, we had a hard time coming down to just 5 that were important to us. So maybe that's what we can try to do, is come down to the 5 that are most important. I think if I'm hearing you and what we talked about before, was we're asking for flexibility to move funding.
That would be in the first bullet. In the second bullet is curriculum selection and designing and programming.
Yeah,
So both of those, yeah.
yeah. So if we can get just down to flexibility for funding and flexibility for curriculum, that, to me, is asking for, you know, look at high-performing districts and give us a little bit of leeway. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah.
Yes, Mr. Dyer?
I think you have to say academically high-performing districts, unfortunately, because a high-performing district in the way that the
It's on
Department of
here.
well, no, the way that the Department of Education looks at it, it has to also do with the audit, which you may not have a material weakness, and we have a material weakness, so we cannot be, is that right?
The state's language is academically high-performing.
It is.
versus you-
So, but if you have
You refer to
if you have a
high-performing
deficiency,
in class size or an audit.
yeah,
That's the state definition of academically high-performing versus an all-A high-performing school district.
I'm trying to understand, what do we qualify for with a that one deficiency?
When you include the word academically high-performing, that falls under the state's definition, which
Okay.
requires all full compliance with class size and no material audit findings, which
Right.
we generally have
When you had a material weakness, yeah.
one to 2 a year, versus flexibility for a high-performing school district who might have all A's.
Okay.
So I just wanted to flip the language.
So we just changed the language there a little bit. I think that makes it a little better.
Yeah, so get rid of the academically.
Yeah,
And
just high performing.
anytime you get an audit, they're gonna find 1 or 2 things, because that's what their job is, you know? They're gonna look for 1 or 2 things that they can at least.
Well, they can find things, but a material weakness is a specific definition.
Right.
And it is different, you can find weaknesses, but if you find a material weakness, it's a different
true.
definition, than just finding something. So that's the issue. It didn't seem like a very big deal. Something was recorded on the wrong place on the ledger. It was recorded, and it was accounted for, but it was on the wrong place, so they considered that a material weakness, unfortunately.
So you know how important your staff is
And
at doing
depending on the value of it, if it's
Right.
800,000 or
Right.
80,000,
That's
it's
true.
whether it's material
Right.
within the fund.
Right. I thought, by the way, that this legislative priorities last year, we redid it from what we had traditionally done off of FASB. So this isn't the same thing that we've been doing, in my memory anyway,
No,
the year after
you're
year.
right.
This was pretty unique for a school district actually to go on their own and do something different than FASB has done, I guess.
It was definitely different. There were people that saw this from different districts that weren't happy with it, because they said, well, why aren't you supporting FSB? I said, well, we are on some of these, but some of them are unique to us,
Right.
and that's about us, you know?
And the other question is I thought we did have it where it aligned with the strategic plan. I thought that these circles over here is where as we've gone through it, I remember talking about it in terms of the
We did.
strategic plan.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure that we were,
We did, and I'm going to tell you how much I appreciated the bill numbers that are in there. because I was able to actually point that out. Because I'm going to tell you, a legislator gets, I don't know how many of these a day,
Yeah.
probably 20 to 30 a day. And, you know, they look at it, they file it. But when you're going through it with them, it's easy if you point out a few things like, hey, here's the bill that exactly is pointing to what we're asking for. And if you vote for this bill, this is going to help us this way. Or if you don't vote for the bill, this is going to help us this way. So it's really nice that we put those bill numbers in there and the statute numbers. And, you know, any time that this can be a flexible document where we put those numbers in as we see the bills showing up, it helps. It
Okay.
does.
Good.
Yes, Dr. Jones.
You know, I think this is a good, just good information to share. First of all, have it on just one page. And also that first part about the ongoing commitment through active engagement with local, state, and federal policymakers, the board works to advance legislation that empowers our schools to innovate, lead, and thrive. I know we've all met with our senators, representatives, emails, and so forth, but it does go along with our strategic plan. And the one thing that I think is so important, especially with closing 3 buildings this year, you know, we're closing Rosewood, Glendale, and Osceola. Authorize a reallocation of funds across categorical and capital budget lines, including instructional materials and transportation. I mean, these are the kind of things with our capital money and being able to put that maybe in some operating money. I've discussed that with Senator Grahl and Mr. Brackett. And then the truancy thing I think is so important because we do have an issue with attendance. 90% is not good enough, so having a little bit more backbone in that. I think our board talked about that. And the voluntary pre-K, as Ms. Berenborg said about requirement for kindergarten, but also there's an issue with getting more of our, I think we have 9 pre-K sites now with our elementary schools, but it's not the whole day, and parents have a hard time with then substituting what happens after noon or whatever time they leave, making that full time, and again, getting that back to, from the early learning coalitions to the school district. But the autonomy, I think, is so important. Maybe we can combine that wording a little bit, but I think there's a bill now by one of our senators, Ms. Moody, on having a little bit more flexibility for our charter schools, and I think we should have just as much flexibility as our charter schools. We're both public schools, you know? And so when we look at something like that, then give us the advantage there because we can then create what we want to do, whether it's a boutique high school, our instructional material that we're selecting for certain elementary schools, but just having a flexibility and more autonomy, I think is just key for all school boards. And it's just something that we have to continue to fight for because, you know, we have to follow all the state statute in the Department of Education. Most of them are in Chapter 100632. So we just need more flexibility. So making sure that's a key word or a key throughout all of this, I think is important for our public schools. But I do like the, I know you and Dr. Shafty worked on this and Dr. Moore, I do like how it's aligned with our strategic plan. We have to really, really fight for that funding and allocation.
So I'm going to piggyback on your comment about VPK. If you look on here, it says moving from learning coalitions to the school district. That would save money. Our learning coalition that we report to is, the headquarters is in Martin County.
Right.
And I've called her a couple of times. She was a school board member down in Martin. And, you know, we're not getting, I'm sorry, but I think we could get more service if we did it ourselves.
Yep.
If we really coordinated with our VPKs and got that done. I just feel like, you know, we see, and we're tracking our kids, right? When they're going from our VPKs,
Right.
we're tracking them into kindergarten to say, how are they being successful? And that tracking data can actually help us. And it would be very important, by the way, to have that when we go to our legislators. Because, and I'm saying when we go to our legislators, but they determine what bills they're going to put forward over the summer. And so this would be something that would be nice if we can get it finished early enough that we can go to them over the summer and say, this is important, here's why. And that's an easy one, that one. That doesn't cost them any money. There are a couple on here that were easy because it didn't cost any money. The truancy one.
Right.
And the truancy one, by the way, there was a bill going forward about this. So it was really easy to tag onto that. But I don't know where we are with it as far as how it got finished. Because, you know, when we get the budget, there are going to be 2 extra special sessions. One will be the budget, and one will be, I think, mapping out the congressional areas for the future. There might be 3. But the one with the budget is the one that we got to watch carefully, because that's when that other bill came in at the last second and became law. The one about the schools that can take our campuses, that sort of thing. So that's why you need to watch those, because that's where those other bills that die come
Right.
back to life.
The midnight bills that come through.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Is there anything else anybody wants to add to this that's important that we
Yeah,
maybe overlooked?
I,
Yes.
to add to the conversation about the truancy, the item here on truancy, I'm not so sure that's a priority here for us. I think that maybe we should take a look at that, look at the data and see if that's still a priority or not. It may not be. We may have already addressed the issue, or could address it through our policy or practices rather than make it a legislative item. With regard to our strategic plan, because this is next year's priorities, the reason why I mention that is because we haven't done our next year's strategic plan yet, or reviewed it to see where we are in terms of our targets. Have we met our targets or have we not met our targets? So we're doing our priorities first before the strategic plan from the district level, so we're a little behind. Doesn't put us at a big disadvantage, but it's just, you know, we're not there yet. We're not there in terms of our discussion about our strategic plan. The one item that I think is quite important that we should add there, that I know we have talked about and is a rapidly changing item, is artificial intelligence. From the legislative standpoint, I do believe that there really needs to be another look at statewide AI guidance for K through 12 schools, and that student data, specific to student data privacy protections, I think we need to make sure that we adopt something that aligns with those needs for us. Maybe something along the lines of provide full funding for AI technology protections, integrations that would ensure that students wouldn't be exposed to chat bots, something along those lines. There was, and I was going to mention it earlier, there's a launch of an investigation from our Florida Attorney General into OpenAI and ChatGPT. So I think that it would make sense for us to include something along the lines of AI in our legislative priorities and see where it goes from there. The last thing that I think we should always keep in here and maybe reword is fully fund, even though we have transportation in here, we have it with some other items. I think that fully funding transportation should always be a priority. It's one of the underfunded mandates, and we always seem to be at a loss with regard to transportation, but especially with special needs transportation and getting into those hard-to-reach neighborhoods. I think that is something that we should discuss and add. So those 2 items are items that I'm bringing forward.
So,
for discussion.
I don't think we need to add it because it's already there. It says authorize the reallocation of funds across categorical and capital budget lines, including instructional materials and transportation.
Well,
And I will say, when I met with a legislator, they said, well, if you ask us to fund or increase transportation, we're just going to take it out of another education budget. So the ask is more about give us flexibility and give us more money, and we need to move it to where it goes.
Again, I said that it was on here, but it's worded differently. And our need is to have it fully funded. I mean, that's clearly the need. How they interpret it or where they get it from, that's out of our hands. We can only hope that, that all of our items would be received, and there would be forward movement towards them. But it is a need.
I personally think it's worded fine. I'm fine with it as it is, because I think that it tells the three things that need funding. You know, our capital budget, our instructional materials, and our transportation.
But this is saying reallocation of funds, it's not saying fully fund transportation. Those are two different things.
It's semantics.
No, it goes beyond semantics. It goes to definition. The definition of reallocating is moving funds around.
Right.
Meaning of
Flexibility.
fully funding is provide us with all of the funds that we need for full transportation services.
Ms. Beerenbaum?
Yes.
You know, I personally would like to keep attendance on there. We have an issue with attendance. I think, actually at the last leadership MCAN meeting, Heather Holden and her group did a wonderful presentation on what we're trying to do to make it better. There's a real issue there. And I just don't think it's this county. And transportation is one of those things, I think, for years since I've been on the board and then as a principal, we have never had enough funding. So that's one of those things where you just keep asking and they don't give. So I like how it's worded here versus we need more money in transportation, because that hasn't worked. How much are we short each year, Mr. Green? I used to know that. I could probably guess.
I can tell you transportation is not nearly as underfunded as exceptional student education. You hear me say that quite
Yeah,
often,
that
but
coding is correct,
I
yeah.
want to say it was $1.5 million, $2 million.
Okay. But that's every year, basically. I mean,
That's every
we've
year.
always been underfunded. I can't remember.
It's a certain percentage that they fund.
Well, just to be clear, in the FEFP, there is a categorical for
Right.
transportation.
Right.
There's a categorical for school safety. Those categoricals never fully fund whatever that area is,
Right.
because sometimes the assumption is that should be part of your BSA, your base student allocation as well. So use the categorical for school safety, and then when you don't have enough money in the BSA to fund all of the extras that those categoricals do not cover is where you come into an issue.
And the biggest thing I was told when I went up there is don't ask for money because we're cutting the budgets. So instead of, and listening to them, reallocation to me is a better term because we're not asking for money, even though we are every year. And FSBA asks for money on our behalf. They're asking for the increase. But this is a way to say to them, all right, well, we'll be creative if you let us be flexible.
Right.
So when they're saying they're cutting all the budgets, you can't say, well, we need extra funding. We can say that all we want, but it's not going to happen.
I like the fact that our district could take a look at this and see, okay, this is where we need it, this is where we need it, instead of saying categorically it must go there no matter what. I just like that flexibility.
Anything else? Anything anybody wants to add to it that's not on here?
I like it.
Are you okay with kindergarten being mandatory?
Yeah.
No?
That's fine.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Most of these
No.
aren't my
How
priorities.
about college? Should that be mandatory?
No, I think most people would be better off not going to college
I
and getting
agree.
a trade school.
I agree.
We're gonna find out real quick.
How about VPK?
Well, we're working on that, but
Yeah, that's another one they're trying at the FSBA level to increase VPK funding. That's how they put it.
To do it full day for kids of need would cost $300 million, and meanwhile, we spent $5 billion on vouchers,
Yep.
which has made less of a difference than $300 million to do VPK all day long. So anyway, there's no money. I asked the CFO of Florida about, everybody's saying there's no money and there's a $5 billion deficit, and he said, I don't believe it. Okay, I don't know who to believe.
Dr. Pasca,
Yeah.
I told my children when they were 3 that college was mandatory,
I like it.
and they believed it till about 8th grade.
House rules.
All right, so I think we're done with that. Now we're to B, which is AI guidance overview.
So I put this on here because I know that we had a presentation from Dr. McMahon in February, I'm gonna say. And in going back even to January, we had a discussion as a board at our January workshop, and where we all agreed that the board would need to come up with some guiding principles, that there would be board guiding principles. We haven't had that discussion. In the presentation from Mr. McMahon in February, that he presented to us what the district is doing in terms of our AI task force, which is fine, it's great, you know, although we don't have regular updates on that. We do know that there is a task force that he is heading for us in this particular area. The concern is that even at that meeting, some board members said, but what about the guiding principles? We discussed that we would, as a board, come up with guiding principles. I think it's important for us to follow up with that and include those things, whatever our guiding principles would be, in our future strategic plan, in our future updates for our strategic plan as well. The principles don't have to change so much as, or as much as AI, the AI world is changing. The guiding principles would pretty much remain steady because those are the guardrails. And so I just wanted to bring it up for discussion because we still have not had that, that discussion. We keep kind of saying, well, we need to do it, but we're not doing it. So that it needs to be done. I think what I provided as backup to this item, let me go back, is our policy, of course, and let me go back, and a link to the Florida Department of Education, I'm gonna say the Florida Department of Education AI Task Force. I've got a million tabs open, so bear with me real quick.
Is that in
Florida
this handout
K-12.
that I just got, or where is this?
It's in the agenda.
It's Florida K-12 AI Education Task Force that Dr. Moore is involved with.
Yes. So what you'll see there, are really just, and I included a list of just some in the, in this item, just to kind of start the conversation, because it drives me crazy when we say we really want to do something and we all agree that we should do something and then we don't do it. So I just had some things on here, policy, ethical, and legal considerations, some of the very basic things, which we also know are being looked at from the perspective of our AI task force as well. Cultivate AI literacy and understanding, digital citizenship, charting the course, data protections and privacy, responsible use, monitoring and evaluation, collaboration and collective impact, transparency and open communication, AI literacy and fluency, which is very important because we certainly do not want to lead students down the wrong path, or teachers or employees for that matter. AI for students with disabilities and special needs, and you can read the rest of the list. So I just want to open it up for discussion on that point, and hopefully we can get some going.
Yeah, I'm the one that brought it up in January and asked for them to come and present, and I'm the one that brought up the guiding principles for AI that I felt like we needed to do. However, the superintendent and I have had conversation about when is the right time to put it on our agenda, and having them concentrate so much right now on student performance and getting through the end of the school year, we felt like it would be better if we made this a workshop topic for the board to discuss when we had more time and they weren't stressed out from all their commitments that they're doing with helping support students academically. Dr. Moore, are you still there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you want to talk about this? Because I know you've been very involved in the task force at the state level, and we talked about our guiding principles and how we need to kind of look at what the state is doing as well.
So whether it's the task force or the conversation the board is having, I think our task force does a absolutely outstanding job of going slow to, in fact, go fast. And really creating a structure to ensure that, A, we protect our students, and I think we do a really, really great job in that. And as, if anything from the state perspective changed, we would obviously bring that back to the board for approval. As you did reference, we are currently, moving 110 miles an hour towards the end of assessment. I'm looking in the room, and most of our team had to go either teach a class or visit schools to follow up with that level of support. If it is guiding principles that the board would like, I think we could codify those and bring them back from the board and use or be dependent upon the group of professionals who are working to bring that back to the board.
So would it be probably advantageous then to put it on our schedule for either the May or June workshop?
June would be the most appropriate, because when
That's what I
you're
thought.
getting into May is going to be the end of year assessments, the closing activities, the balancing of the books, end of year results. Dr. McMahon at that particular time is the busiest time of the year because that's the accountability season, and he oversees accountability and assessment.
Okay, so we'll put it on the June workshop then.
But the guiding principles, Dr. Moore, as you just mentioned, are board guiding principles, and then the work of the task force, as you well know, that is happening throughout the state, works under those guiding principles. It's not that the task force brings us guiding principles, it's that the task force works under the guiding principles. Correct?
Correct. Yeah, no, that's correct. And at the last workshop, they did present those guiding principles, which is how we're currently functioning. So if the board would like to have a separate conversation regarding the work or the structure of how that committee works, or not necessarily that group works, that would be something separate. If the board's not satisfied with the guiding principles that were presented, I guess that would be a conversation for the board to have. But I do think at the end of the school year, you look at the presented guiding principles, any changes to state law based on what's currently happening or pending to happen in Tallahassee, that we would reevaluate those guiding principles to shift or modify. So if there's something that the board would like to do above and beyond what was presented by Dr. McMahon, then we can definitely do that.
So the item I brought to you in January that we discussed was the board having a policy with guiding principles. I think that's where we're getting at, is the board should have the policy, keep the guiding principles pretty broad, exactly. And then, get the feedback from, which we have now, the feedback from your task force, but we also need to see what the task force at the state level is doing. Because I do know that there have been other districts that have put policies forward, and I'm thinking of Seminole. Seminole had a really good one that they did early on, but then the state task force came through and had some that were a little different, so they had to adjust. And that's fine, that's fine, but I think that's what I was asking for. I think that's what I think you're asking for.
Yeah.
Is that broad understanding that we have to have a policy in place, so that if anything ever came back to us from a parent, that we have something in place.
Yeah, and just to bring that kind of full circle, the resolution that I brought forward, board members, I don't know if you remember, but the resolution that I brought forward in January kind of talked about some guiding principles in there that we could work under without creating the policy that includes the guiding principles in the policy, because as you mentioned, it's so fluid. I'm okay with changing policy and creating what we want the language to be in the policy for AI, which would be great, because then we're actually creating the full framework for it, and then the work of Dr. Mann and the task force would work underneath that policy or that umbrella. But the second option that I'm going to throw out there is to revert or to go back to the idea of creating a resolution that basically says this is the way of work until we get to the broader work of creating the policy with those frameworks or those guiding principles. So that could also be another option.
Did you want to speak, Dr. Jones?
Yeah. Our AI policy was adopted January 27th of 2025. So Chair Berenborg, when you're talking about guiding principles, or would you put it in here, or are you thinking of a separate, right in that one?
No, we
Separate
need to reevaluate that policy and make sure that it's in line with our state task force recommendations.
Okay, because this policy is pretty good, but again, one thing we've talked about too is adjust and being flexible, because this is something that's going to change on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence. You know, when Dr. McMahon presented at the February workshop, I thought we had a good dialogue, and we talk about, you know, guiding principles, core values. I think one thing the board agreed upon was safety was the main key here, and how we would make sure that our teachers use instructional strategies to help our students as AI is a tool. I mean, it's ongoing. You know, we're now looking at AI dashboard and what we're looking at here. But I think coming back in June, when we're kind of hopefully through the end of the year with all our data and so forth, and our schools are moving and we're getting ready as we start in the fall, is to take a look at this and look at the recommendations for obviously guiding principles. If the board thinks we need something different, then we can look at it, but we see what the state task force looks like too on this. But it's ever changing. The minute we do something, we'll probably have to amend it.
Mr. Dyer?
I look forward to the June workshop where we will discuss this with materials. It was referenced that we had a link and materials, which I saw none on my thing for this discussion, so maybe
It's
I'm
in the
looking
board
at
docs.
the wrong board docs, but I don't know.
Okay, and the other thing, the reason why we were waiting on this is because the task force was looking at giving some general guiding principles as well. And where are we with Neola with this? Have they gotten anything to us on updating AI policies?
Actually speak to that. At our last AI work group, we took the Neola recommendations that were shared with us, as well as the work we know the AI task force is doing in the state of Florida, and we looked at our policy, and the team made some revisions based upon all of those different pieces of information, as well as all of the work we've done around guiding principles and so forth. So we will be passing that on to legal counsel to make sure that it's fully compliant with all regulations. Data privacy was one of the topics and issues that we discussed at length, and how important data privacy is. So that became incorporated in there as well.
And I think the same time that we discuss that, we need to look at the student code of conduct to make sure it's aligned to these principles. I'm thinking of, you know, when a student takes another student's picture and they rework it to bully them, that sort of thing. And that's out there already. So we just need to be aware of it and be ahead of the game. So you're going to bring those possible changes to us in June, along with the Neola policy? Okay.
Well,
Whatever Dr. Moore's wishes are, we will
Oh,
bring
yeah,
it on
well,
his timeline.
That's
Dr.
not
Moore?
really how we work, but we will, yes.
Okay. We'll look at that in June then. Thank you.
Well, I would just recommend, just to reiterate, that the board discuss the guiding principles and whatever the guiding principles are for us, that those be incorporated in the recommendation for the new policy coming forward, not the reverse.
Okay, constitutional protections for voluntary prayer.
So there, I'm not sure if you all are aware of an email that was sent out from our Florida Department of Education based on guidance from the Federal Department of Education, protecting prayer and religious expression in public elementary and secondary schools. All of those documents were supposed to be added as backup, and instead you all received a hard copy. So that should be in front of you. That was on Dr. Moore. That was sent to him in time for you to have it as backup, but it wasn't included. The discussion today, originally, the discussion today was to talk about new language for our policy to incorporate these recommendations. But of course now we, the information that has come down is that we have to wait. We have to just wait on the Board of Education to revise the model policy that they have, and then we're supposed to adopt their model policy. So I just kept it on here anyway to have a conversation if anybody wanted to add to it or take away. It doesn't remove just because the DOE did not upgrade or update their model policy doesn't mean that we do not move forward with advising our personnel, our employees, of their rights and of students' rights to engage in any religious expression that is appropriate for them to do. They can do so if they choose to do that. Students' expression of religious viewpoints would include that they have the religious right to pray in school and not have any burdens put on them to say that they cannot do it so long as they do not, and of course Ms. Enville will correct me, so long as they do not interrupt current ongoing lessons, actual lessons that are going on. Students are permitted to pray privately and quietly by themselves, whether in class, at an athletic event, or before a meal. Students may also pray in a speaking voice on the same terms as any other student might engage in non-religious speech, and prayers should not violate ordinary class rules or interrupt class instruction. So there are quite a few other things that are included here, and there are protections for staff as well, for employees as well, who are also have their rights, I suppose, updated based on this guidance. I see Ms. Enville shaking her head, so I want to thank you. I get the thumbs up. Most importantly, which I thought was pretty interesting as I read through it all, that employees have the right, it says here, employees have the right to engage in individual acts of prayer and to pray with students, which I thought was pretty interesting, and to pray with students during the conduct of their work. But it should avoid suggesting, encouraging, discouraging, supervising prayer with students, or any perceived school-endorsed religious activity. This does not, of course, include, there are separate provisions for student-led religious groups, so a student-led group during lunchtime or after-school clubs or before school. Those are separate from some of, those are also protected, but those are separate from some of the things that I just mentioned here. But of course, you all have the information, and I'll open it up for discussion. If not, we'll just move forward.
Can I just say one
Yes,
thing?
go ahead.
I'm at a lot of activities, a lot of school events and so forth. Kids are praying all the time. I go to sporting events. These are student-led prayers. And when I was a high school principal, it was never an issue. We just did get this information, but I do want to read the conclusion on page 9, which I thought was well done. Taking the above as a whole, the prudent course of action for school officials is to allow the individuals who make up public school community to act and speak in accordance with their faith, provided they do not invade the rights of others. The school does not itself participate in religious action or speech as an institution, and the school does not favor secular over religious views or one religious views over another. This is not the familiar but legally unsound metaphor of a wall of separation between religious faith and public schools. It is rather a stance of neutrality among and accommodation toward all faiths and hostility toward none, deeply rooted in our nation's history, traditions, and constitutional law, a stance that upholds our Constitution's recognition of the important role that religion plays in the lives of many Americans. And again, I just want to say, as someone who's been in this community for many years, I see student prayer. I saw it at baseball. I saw it at football. I see it at track. And to my knowledge, it has never, ever been told they cannot do that. And I'm not sure what the new law will bring. I'm looking at the analysis. I looked at this when this was on the agenda. House Bill 1009 and Senate Bill 1504, which was approved in July of 2025. And it basically does some summary of what I just read. But it just basically said that we do not discriminate against a student's voluntary expression of religious viewpoints or on an otherwise permissible subject. And again, so we do not endorse or sponsorship or any expression of the school district, but and the student not be vulgar, but I know the school district has been doing this for a long time.
Mr. Dyer?
Yeah, I think that this is good and certainly worthy of discussion. I like the summary as well, where it says that I think the most important thing to me is there's been perceived in public education a hostility towards religion. And I think if there's anything that is missing as I look at our society today, it's a moral compass and really the definition between right or wrong. So I think anything that we can do to get that moral compass back into the world, we seem to have lost our minds since COVID. It's just has been a different world. That said, we did have at the last meeting, I remember discussing protocols, and the protocol said we were going to get anything that was important to discuss, we were going to get the materials in advance. So here we are 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, getting materials today, which I obviously cannot read through.
Hold on. Dr. Moore, can you please apologize for that? Dr. Moore?
Yeah, that was inadvertently not posted. It was just one email that went in the wrong direction. So that is completely on me.
Well,
I gave him the materials long before it was supposed to be submitted.
The point of it is the result is the materials are delivered today. So perhaps when that happens, we should just defer the conversation to the next meeting or the next workshop. And that would be my only thing, because it's, you know, there's a lot of reasons things happen. But I didn't get any materials on the other one beforehand either. And there were materials that were referred to, so that's just it.
Well, those are in board docs. I can.
I don't have, I'm looking at it right now. There's no attachment to the board docs on mine.
Is it in the description of the details? Look in the description of the details. The link is there.
Okay, I'll look.
Okay.
But,
Dr. Pasco, do you have a comment?
oh, sorry.
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say is I know that there's something, because I read this, I didn't read all this, but I read the letter, and it said that we are not to create a policy, the policy is coming down from the state that we must put into place.
Right.
So we should not be creating a policy about this.
Correct. That's what I said at the beginning. You have to wait for them.
So I'd rather just wait and look at it all when it comes.
Yes. Ms. Envil, would you mind, and there was a question that was raised on where this was all coming from, and I know that the original guidance from the Federal Department of Education, Department of Education, really based this and kind of evaluated all of this in, as a result of that Mahmoud case, Mahmoud versus Taylor, and another one that happened that came out of the Supreme Court. If you want to just talk a little bit about that.
So there was a 2023 federal guidance on prayer and religious expression in public schools that this 2026 federal guidance has updated. And essentially what it did is it incorporates the new, the Mahmoud v. Taylor Court in 2025 decision, that which is essentially expanded protections for individual religious expression in schools. I actually created a side-by-side comparison chart that I sent to Cabinet and I believe was shared with staff. It kind of goes through what happened, what 2023 guidance says and compared it to what 2026 guidance says, and I'll be happy to share that with you all. The topics are student religious expressions, employee religious expressions, school-sponsored versus private prayer, equal access, annual certification requirement. We now have a requirement that districts have to confirm that staff have been informed of updated guidance. And so that's already been, I believe it was communicated on 2 separate occasions. I'm going to defer to my partner here on the right so she can do it. But basically the focus was on non-coercion. And I don't think that, I haven't seen anything that would, that the district does that would suppress either a student or employee's ability to pray, but that's kind of where we've looked at. But we did make sure that we had some guidance that was provided to staff and principals especially, so they could share it with their staff.
So one concern I have that was mentioned was, a teacher praying with a student without a parent's knowledge. I'm a little concerned about that because that violates a parent's parental right. So we need to make sure that when we see this come down and we look at the parental rights policy that we have, that we make sure that we're in alignment.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that the guidance that was shared with staff is that employees can engage in visible personal prayer during non-instructional time if it's clear they're not acting on behalf of the school. So for instance, I think it was in that guidance you saw that was issued in February from the US DOE. It says that, for instance, they can pray before they have their meal in the cafeteria if that's what they're doing.
Yep, I've seen it. All right, thank you. All right, so we're on to our last item, which is Dr. Jones.
Yes, thank you. There was a PowerPoint attachment to this. This is on the Children's Service Initiative. That is a grant that the Gifford community is requesting. I won't go through the entire grant, but I want to do a few highlights. As many of you know, I was principal at Gifford Middle 6 and Gifford Middle, so very close to the Gifford community. And either my husband or I have attended all of these meetings. I believe there are 8. We've had 5 or 6 so far. And they all talk about certain components for this grant. It's basically a state grant application, and it's looking to revitalize a community that has a high level of poverty and limited access to services. The components are early childhood, K-12 education, health and wellness, safety, parental support, adult ed, and housing. And if you think about that, some of that really aligns with our strategic plan. It's a framework for communities to come together, and that's been the most important part for me. We've had 40 to 50 people in attendance at each of these meetings. We've had county commissioners, many of our nonprofit leaders, many of the Gifford community, young and old, and they're very, very excited. Basically, if you take a look at this, they're trying to have a great discussion within the community. So when the state representative comes to Gifford on Wednesday, April 22nd, their meetings have been on Wednesday. And I think on February 23rd, we all received an invite to that first meeting just to kind of get to know what it is. But I think they've got a really good shot of possibly getting this. To summarize this, and again, I think we've had 5 of the 8 meetings so far, they're trying to look for a place in Gifford to have like a one-stop shop to help everybody. At the last meeting, that one was on health, and there was some really interesting data that they received from the Census Bureau. One that really struck me was the high mortality rate of African-American babies compared to white babies in this county. And another one is if you live on the beach compared to Gifford, you will live 10 years, was that right, Dr. Sheff? 10 years longer. So a lot of things that they're trying to do. And the other thing too in Gifford is that having access. If you don't have a car, you cannot maybe get to good health care. If you don't have a car, you might not be able to get to the services that you need. So they want to have a place in Gifford so that people can go here and maybe get help on health, maybe get help on doctors, maybe get help just on housing. That's another thing. Gifford's being surrounded now with some housing that people in Gifford just cannot afford. And so this is something I think that would really, really be good. Now, the school district, and I've talked to Dr. Moore about this, I'm just asking for a letter of support from the school district and the school board that we support them in applying for this grant. Again, the state representative, I don't know who it's going to be there, one with the grant will be there on Wednesday, April 22nd. And I want to follow up on something that Mr. Dyer said earlier with Gifford Middle. I did not make it to that night because my grandson was here, but I followed up with Mr. Timmer. He has an invite. This is not just a community, but the Historical Society there, the school that is there, Treasure Coast Community Health that is there. They're all showing up to see if they can help. This is modeled after the Harlem Children's Zone, where there's a high level of poverty and limited access to services. You know, we could say, well, you could just go here or just go there. It's easier said than done. But on Gifford Middle, Mr. Timmer, you're talking about the parents that are there. Yeah, I know some of them, and they're looking to make that school, whether we go to a boutique high school or not, you know, the real center point of the community, and they are working hard. I got to visit Mr. Timmer last week to talk about Gala. But anyway, I'm just asking for a letter of support from the board, because when other counties who have applied, I know Orange County has one, I'm not sure of the area in Orange County, Jacksonville, and I believe Tampa, but I don't remember the names of the neighborhoods. So just looking for a letter of support from the board. I asked Dr. Moore if he would maybe write that, and then we could look to see whether you wanted to sign it or not. But I'm telling you, I haven't seen this much, say this right, initiative, this much discussion. We go over the data, and then we break into groups to see what are the strategies that will help us with safety. What are the strategies that will help us with health? What are the strategies? I mean, we all know this, having that early learning, how that can help our school district. So just asking Dr. Moore if he could pin something like that, and if you want to sign it, but it'd be great if we have it from the school board, because that's important. When they did that in Jacksonville, Tampa, and I think Orlando, it really helped them. So I just wanted to put that out there, and I might not have the answer to everything, but I think the PowerPoint really summarizes it well. They're excited, and I know a lot of people were invited to that April 22nd meeting, so I'll have to get there after a scholarship night, I think, but thank you for just listening.
All right, anybody want to comment?
I will.
Yes.
Are you asking for the district to apply for this grant?
No, Gifford is applying. We would just do
Who's
school.
Gifford? When you say Gifford, Gifford is a huge organization.
It's
I mean,
a children's service
huge-
initiative, yeah. Children's service initiative, Gifford Community is applying.
Gifford Community
Yes.
is blocks long. So who in Gifford is asking for this?
It's whole Gifford community. We've had representation from almost all parts of Gifford. It's a Florida Children's Service Initiative, and it's a community-based strategy, and Gifford is working on it as a whole community.
But you have to have a lead person who's
Yes, the
actually.
lead person
who
is
this?
Tony Brown and Rashawn Green, NAACP and Rashawn Green. But we also have, I'm trying to think everybody who's been at the meetings. Those are the two lead people, Rashawn Green and Tony Brown. Ida Letts have been there, the Browns have been there, the Lundys have been there. I know Dr. Hudson has not been able to come,
It's
but,
fine. I don't need a list of who's been there.
okay,
Just
well,
who is
it's Tony
requesting
Brown and
this.
Rashawn Green.
Okay. So because the PowerPoint that you provided is from Pioneering Change.
Right. That's,
And-
Rashawn Green leads that organization.
Okay, and the other title in this, you're requesting for a resolution, that's different from what you just said right now as a letter. A letter of support and a resolution are two totally different things. Resolutions are typically created to put a little bit more teeth to the work of the district. This doesn't seem like it's going to be the work of the district, so it's not something that we are doing and we are creating.
Oh, you know what?
That's
I'll
different
leave that
from
up
what-
to Dr. Moore, whether we do a resolution or just a letter of support. For example, you wanted an AI resolution, correct? Was that AI?
Yes, but that
Okay,
would direct
yeah.
the work, yeah,
Well-
but that would direct our work, like what we are doing as a district. Resolutions and proclamations are what we
Yeah, thank you for
are-
the clarification. Yeah, I think that basically overall, we're going to do a letter of support Dr. Moore, which one would you agree on? In fact, if it's a resolution, we're not actually involved in the actual work, but some of our information is being used, like pre-K and the students, how they're prepared in the Gifford area and so forth, which is a big thing.
That
Dr. Moore, what are your thoughts on that?
So a letter of support in regards to this specific initiative would be fine. No need for a resolution or any formal board action other than the conversation you all are having today. And if there's consensus, I would be more than happy.
Well, maybe I'd ask other board members what they think.
Could you repeat that? The last part, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
You're out of order.
Dr.
You're out of order right now. She's speaking
Oh,
with the superintendent.
I just couldn't hear him, so can he repeat it?
Maybe I'd like to have the opinion of other board members, whether it be a resolution. I mean, we can look at the wording on that resolution. I'm not asking the district to do work on that. Obviously not a proclamation, but to see what they think, because this is something that if they can get this in the long run, I think it would help our school district, let alone, more importantly, help the Gifford community, which is obviously a big part of our school system. Mr. Dyer, any thoughts?
Can we just,
Yeah,
Madam Chair?
Mr. Dyer, go ahead. Your turn to speak.
I think that the idea of doing something in Gifford to bring that sense of community, I really sensed it at Gifford Middle School.
Yes.
When I was up there at the event. I think that's a good idea. The other question that I have, I know in Orlando and Tampa and Jacksonville, there are things that are called community schools, which we have at Dodgertown. So I'm wondering if that's part of this initiative, if this initiative is part of that. And then the last thing, letter of support, I certainly would be in favor of. I think it's a good idea. Has nothing to do with this topic at all, but my feeling about resolutions are kind of virtue signaling and kabuki theater. So I'm not much into resolutions.
I'm okay with that.
But, you know, I either think you do a policy and you do an action, but to do something is, you've checked the box. I don't like resolutions. So that's just in general.
Okay, letter of support would be
Specifically for
fine.
this, it may be, but I would certainly be for a letter of support.
Thank you. Ms. Barrenborn, what are you thinking?
Well, hold on. Dr. Posca, do you want to speak?
I would just say that I would support a letter, and obviously it would be a very good initiative for Gifford, and we'd all appreciate them getting more resources, and this sounds like an interesting program.
Thank you. That'd be good.
Yeah,
Did you want to say something
thank you.
else?
Yeah, Dr. Moore, can you repeat that last thing that you said, because I didn't hear you?
The last thing I said is I would be more than happy to do a letter of support, given that there's consensus from the board today.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a letter sounds fun. I mean, as superintendent, he can write a letter. So in his daily operations, I mean, anything that helps our communities is a great idea. The concern that I have is opening up the door for all communities to ask for our support. I mean, all organizations to ask for our support in this same way. And we know that, at least I know from experience, that we have to be careful who we open up the door to in terms of partnership or working with, because we don't know what individual organizations' goals and, what their vision is and how people use our name for their own, I guess, political purposes or financial gain. That's my only concern, but supporting children in our communities, absolutely, I think that's a great thing. I just want to be careful that because we have policies that actually outline partnerships with nonprofits, so we just have to be careful not to overstep those policies there. But Dr. Moore, if you want to write a letter, write a letter.
Ms. Barrenborn?
Yeah, so I think I need clarification. Is this a letter from the superintendent, or is there a letter from the school board?
I would like, as a school board member, to sign. Now, if you don't want to sign as a school board member, I understand. And I understand what was just said, but we're not looking to support this Gifford. We're looking to support them in applying for a grant. It's an issue that's very specific, and that was in the PowerPoint about how that would help. So it's an issue in, for example, of another community, someone in Oslo or Basel-Fellsmere, we're going for a grant, and you can see that the components help our school district. I think it's key. I would like to have an option to have a board member sign it, but that would be up to each individual board member.
I'd be happy to sign it. I went to the very
I'd be happy to
first,
sign if you want. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
So I'll be happy to sign.
You'll be happy to sign.
Do that. Or I can go for it.
I went to the first meeting, I was invited, and I went, and I was impressed how organized it was and how she found this initiative, because it's funding for her community, which I think, kudos. And having been a principal at a school that was a community school, I saw the benefit that happened for my school immediately. Because what we did is we took a wing of the school, an old wing of the school, and we invited a dentist in, we invited all the different community resources that were there. So if a parent was in need of WIC, they would go down and ask that department, could I apply? It was a really easy way for them to be able to take care of services that they couldn't get a transportation to elsewhere. So I saw the benefit immediately with behavior of my kids, because I had I had one boy off the chain, and as soon as his teeth were taken care of, it was like a different child. So, these kids a lot of kids are dealing with all kinds of things that are happening in their life that are preventing them from furthering their education. So if we can get this and help them do this, I think it's just going to be beneficial for everybody and for our kids and for our academics as well. So I'd be happy to sign it.
Thank you. Thank you, board members, for listening.
Yeah, just one last thing. I think that what you're describing, and actually it just occurred to me, is that perhaps at some meeting we could have an update of Dodgertown and what the community school initiative is there. I think the first one in the state, which is probably what's going on in Evans, in Orlando, was at Evans High School, which is about 3,000 kids, which does have dental, medical, family services, all sorts of things there. And I'm just wondering if there's something through our existing community school that we could do to enhance it or help it. I don't know, but maybe, it could be a part of something that we're already doing too. But anyway. But maybe an update on the community school and what we're doing and how it's working for Dodgertown could be a topic of a future workshop or board meeting.
Just in general, I just think these kind of partnerships help our community and help our school district.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So we'd be more than happy to provide an update on the partnership at Dodgertown, but these two entities are separate initiatives.
They are.
Correct.
But the more we can support kids, the better. And that's what MCAN does, is they meet every month, and it's different organizations that are all working towards the same thing, which is to help our students. So we appreciate all those groups and everything they're doing. All right, with that, I believe that we are concluded. It is 2:42. This meeting is over.